It's 6 o'clock. I will call the monthly meeting of the Sister Bay Village Board to order. Roll call.
Roscoe, here, Shampo, here, Berto, here, Cox,
Here.
Warner, here, Bell,
Here.
and White may be joining us later. I'm not sure.
All right. On to the agenda. So there's one change I want to make to 15 after talking to council. And that's to specify manager performance, to specify village administrator instead of manager performance. So the motion to approve that agenda, motion by Orozco,
Second?
second by Warner. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, approval of the meeting minutes from January 16th.
Couple of corrections.
Okay.
Page 4, line 18. Paula Anschutz, then a phone number, and Ellie Soderberg, comma, Sally Pfeiffer. The "and" should be moved after Ellie.
Okay.
Page 6, line 46. The sentence which starts with the word "which" is not capitalized. Page 7, line 3. For funding the infrastructure, he also emphasized the need for more density, such as through cluster development. I would get rid of the word "through," just cluster development. And page 9, line 20, believes that there is a benefit in creating a policy that includes a log of individuals.
Okay.
That's it.
Anyone else?
Motion approved.
As amended?
Second?
As amended.
Motion by Cox, second by Shampo. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, comments, correspondence, concerns from the public. We got a couple items in here. And there was also a late email.
Did everyone get a chance to read the email that I sent this afternoon from attorney?
No,
No,
it doesn't work.
I did.
Do you want to,
Do you want to read it then?
it's quite lengthy.
Do you have it printed out?
I have one copy here I can share,
Okay.
Several pages, yeah.
so I'm not sure how much of that you want.
So this is from Attorney Goldberg. It's a record of correspondence that came from between the administrator and the attorney, as well as there was one between Randy and Joe.
Randy.
Pretty much just questioning some of the changes that were made to the development agreement. If you have anything to add to that, so we can also pass this around, but.
Yeah, so what happened is Mr. Goldberg, so last time this came to the board, it was the development agreement and conditional use permit that's on the agenda. It was referred back to Plan Commission. Thank you. Plan Commission discussed it. They went line by line. They made many changes. And he is writing saying he still wants more changes, and he points out some specific areas that he feels should be changed. I'm just gonna summarize them real quick. He thinks that we should be using the terms commercial and reasonable measures. He says that he wants it to say that the developer represents it is legally organized or incorporated. He talks about garbage. He disagrees with the terminology we use regarding garbage and the notification to somebody when their garbage is blowing around. And he disagrees with the language we are using on landscaping, saying if somebody doesn't do their landscaping, we have a local landscaper go in and give us a bid to get the work done, and we charge them for it. So those are his oppositions.
Yeah, I think it was, he got into a few more details. If everybody had a chance to read it. He was disagreeing that he shouldn't be obligated to pay for a local landscaper. If it exceeded his budget, he should have a say in, he has a budget, he's gonna put it in reserve. And if we decided he couldn't use his own landscaper for whatever reason, and we chose one locally, that if it outspent his budget, that shouldn't be obligated on him. So that's what he writes in there. And then as far as the garbage, he wasn't necessarily saying he's opposed to the terminology, he's opposed to the cure, which is the time we give him to clean up the garbage, which is in some cases 4 hours. And in some cases, it comes in, the notices later in the day, it's to the next day. So he had some reasonable things that he included, but
Would that be more appropriate to discuss that under 12A and B then? I mean, I want to treat it as public correspondence, but that's really where it's gonna.
whatever, I don't know,
Yeah.
I just was, there's just,
Sure.
it's just a lot, it's just,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's hard to summarize with just a few words.
He did ask that we present it though, so that's why it was
Yeah.
presented at this time.
Okay. All right. So then the other items that were in there was,
Do you want me to go through all?
yeah,
these?
just.
There was a letter from the Historical Society here in Sister Bay thanking the village for its donation to memory of Joan Champeau. A letter from resident Don Howard regarding the number of short-term rental properties in the village. A letter from the Wisconsin Humane Society thanking the village for its annual contribution. And an announcement from UW Oshkosh looking for individuals to participate in private well monitoring study.
Okay. And anybody out in the audience care to make a comment? On a non-agenda item? Paul?
Good evening. I am writing to the board in hopes of communicating my gratitude for the time you're spending working towards a solution on the fourplex project. I would also like to articulate concerns I have about making the deadline posed at the January 16th meeting realistic. I was informed after the closed session on January 16th that a new deadline for February 29th. That deadline now included completing the installation of a culvert on the property as well, which I knew that it had to go in, but there hadn't been a date set prior to that meeting. I was told I needed to sign an agreement that was to be drafted by the village for the building permit to be reinstated and the stop work order lifted. I have still not received a signable agreement. It is not feasible to meet a deadline when I'm not allowed to begin work because I haven't signed an agreement that I haven't received. If this situation is not remedied, we will be in the same situation we are currently trying to resolve on February 29th. I first received the zoning agreement on January 25th. The address was incorrect. The requirement of needing an additional variance for side decks was incorrect. The suggestion of needing that variance is concerning because requiring the building to be set down before a required variance is granted would be putting the project in the same precarious position it was in originally when a variance was required. If that second variance is required, it seems reasonable that I should have been advised to add that setback variance to my original variance instead of going back for a second one. It also stated that I'll be charged double for my zoning permits, and I would like clarification on why that is. I was also told via email that I would have 2 years from signing of the development agreement to paint the building. The new agreement states 1 year. I am just looking for clarification on these discrepancies, and I would like to know if the changes are supported by the code. With several corrections needed, the agreement had to be advised. We are now well into February, and I have not received the updated agreement. With it being the end of the month, there's no chance of lining up the contractors, and it leaves me with 7 work days to get the building on the foundation, which is an impossibility. I encourage us to have more dialogue so we can come to a conclusion. If the village wants this project complete, I urge the board to acknowledge that it will take time to get contractors back on the job after they've moved on to other projects once the stop work order was enforced. And I appreciate your time in working towards a solution.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, then we will go on to 6, county supervisor report. I believe we've got Dave on the line tonight. Dave?
Good evening, everyone.
Evening.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so because of a legislative exchange that took place for the county down in Madison this month, the county board is actually meeting next week. It's a week later. So today, the administrative committee and the joint finance committee met together. And this is what sets the board agenda for next week. So I'll tell you what's going to be on the board agenda and what was approved at these two committees today. So the first one was we have in Health and Human Services, we approved some staff changes and reorganization within Health and Human Services. As you were probably aware, about 2 years ago, the county with the state approval started a treatment court for alcohol and other drug abuse, people that come before court. And we are realigning the Health and Human Services Department to work directly with them and to put behavioral health services that would incorporate AODA people all in one area instead of jockeying them around 3 or 4 different departments within Health and Human Services. It'll all go under one. And so we had to do that. It took considerable reorganization. This affects about 15 different people that were in different departments. So we've now put them under a Health and Human Services or a behavioral health manager with a couple of divisions underneath that. So we hope to be able to move that along and have the treatment court be a little bit more smoother, if you will. It's been working very well up to this point, and this is just one more step along the way. But it is a significant change within Health and Human Services. The other thing that we're restructuring is Land Use Services Department with some staffing changes. And what's happening there is, if you think back 3 or 4 years with COVID and everything that was going on, and then subsequent to COVID, the push we had for housing and people buying housing and moving to Door County, that the department has gotten behind in a lot of compliance issues, violation issues, etc. And so they were short-staffed. So we have decided that we're going to reorganize that a little bit differently. Another thing that we're trying to look at and consider is the land use services and all the building permit issues and inspection issues is in the next 3 years, about 50% of the staff that's in that area is going to be retiring. So we also wanted to take a look at trying to bring people on board now and keep some of that institutional knowledge as we transfer into people in retirement and bringing new people on and trying to build some of that history and back history, if you will. So we approved some significant department staffing changes in land use services, and hopefully we'll be able to get some of the backlog done quickly and put ourselves in a better position going forward to help with permit issuing, compliance, and violation inspections as they move forward. And that was the 2 biggest things from the admin side. When we went to the joint committee meeting with finance included, we also had a very long discussion concerning Knowles Nelson stewardship program. We periodically get Knowles Nelson notifications from the DNR that various property has been purchased and is going to conservation easements, etc., or being bought outright. And similar to what happened with our Pebble Beach a couple years back. So there was 4 new properties that the DNR notified us of that they're looking at providing Knowles Nelson grants for. One of those was down in, I believe it was the town of Claybanks, and the town of Claybanks wrote a letter basically to the county board and to the state objecting to what was going to happen with a particular grant down there for a particular property. And the county has always been supportive and has written resolutions in support of the Knowles Nelson program at the state level. We've been asked by municipalities within the county in past years to provide letters of support either for or against a Knowles Nelson grant that was coming up in a particular township. The county has in the past and reiterated it again today that they are neutral in the positions concerning any Knowles Nelson's grants, that we do not provide letters of support either to the conservation side of things or to the individual townships, just simply that we support overall the Knowles Nelson program within the state. So we were asked to provide a program or a letter of support, which was declined today, again, just to maintain our neutrality. Usually what happens is what gets confusion is the DNR will send a letter out to the county and to the various municipalities, letting them know that a stewardship program or stewardship grant is funded and was going to go for approval, usually before joint finance. And it's difficult to object because it's always an after the fact thing. For instance, in the case we're talking about down in Southern Door, the property was already purchased and closed on in October of 23. Well, now it's 5 months later. It's pretty difficult to go back 5 months later to somebody that's already purchased the property and say you're either for or against the purchase of the property and what they want to do with the grant. So that's why we've always just maintained a neutral position, if you will, as far as what's going on with the grants, other than that we believe overall it's a good thing as far as the state goes. And with what happens with the conservation groups and what to do with the Knowles Nelsons and the various municipalities. And again, I go back to one of the most recent ones that we in the village had was the Knowles Nelson grant that we got helped support the purchase of the Pebble Beach property. So the other thing that came up today that we also approved was the elective salaries for the elected officials for 2025 through 2028. Just like in the village prior to an election, there has to be a definition or it has to be a statement of what the salary is going to be for elected officials prior to papers being taken out for that election. So in this case, papers are taken out not later than April. And so we had to put in place, or they start being taken out in April for this election, this coming election. So we had to put in place the salary for the next 4 years for those elected officials that would fall under that category. And there was considerable discussion about that because on paper, it looks like a significant increase, and it is. But bear in mind that the elected officials, it was 4 years ago prior to COVID that their prior salaries were set. And there's, as everybody knows, there have been significant differences both in the economy and what's going on in the world as far as pay and retention of people. And so we did have to approve that and send that forward. So these are the main 4 items that will be on the county board for next week. All of them, as I recall, require a 2/3 vote, which is significant because it's not taking place in the concept of a budget. So anything that costs money outside of the budget requires a 2/3 approval. And so those are the 4 items that'll go, and it'll be for next Tuesday at the board meeting. And that's what I have for you tonight. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them on that or anything else county related.
Thanks, Dave. Anyone have questions for Dave? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
On to 7, presentation from Miles Danhausen Jr. The additional information on Northern Door Affordable Housing. Miles?
All right. Thanks, Nate. If you guys mind if I sit, just because I have my notes on my computer. I'm not giving like our full presentation, but I know at the last board meeting, I had thrown out the idea of our this group that had created this report and presentation on housing in the county after the study that came out in 2019 might be helpful. I was a part of that group in terms of presenting that information, but the heavy lifting in that was done by Becky Kerwin at Door County Land Use Services Department, Mariah Good also at Land Use Services, and Amy Conley from United Way, and then also a lot of help from Marty Olenichek and Door County Economic Development Corporation. When we did that, we were out to convince people of the need, because people really needed to say like, hey, this is stark, like we need to slap you in the face about this. And I think most people at least recognize the need now. It's a matter of which municipalities care about the need. Is the kind of the big question now. Kudos to Sister Bay, you guys do care about it in a major way. But also we were setting out to not just say like, hey, here's this problem, but like we met with developers and builders to find out why is this so expensive to build? What are those big hurdles? And then also what could our workers really afford? Find out what they're making and how that breaks down into what's affordable for them in Door County for average workers. So after that meeting, myself, Becky, Mariah, and Amy met, and I told them that I had volunteered their time, and they're all about it. They say they see the value. They're working on updating it now. In fact, Becky Kerwin had updated a lot of this, but when we looked at that 2019 presentation, we realized there's a lot of information that sadly the picture, it looked bad then, and it looks really bad now in terms of affordability, despite some of the things that have been done in different communities. the cost of construction, obviously. So what we want to do is get all that stuff, the real data again, and then give this presentation again. Construction costs then were $165 a square foot. I don't know if anyone has tried to build lately, but you might get a quote double that now if you're not doing anything fancy. Vacant lots were a lot cheaper, and since then, and interest rates were a heck of a lot lower. So there's a lot of work to update on that, but we did do some quick stuff. We do plan to do some community meetings to present this data once it's updated in probably end of April, maybe May. But Julie did link to the 2019 report in the agenda, right, Julie? I think I saw that in it. So if anyone wants to check it out, or maybe you did before this, please do just know that the numbers look a lot different today. So in the meantime, I got some specific information for Sister Bay. I talked to a few key people, the director of Northern Door Children's Center, talked to Marissa Downs, builder of the Shoals, and then representatives from Door County Medical Center and Scandia Village about some of the data they have and what their struggles are. You know, how much is housing affecting their ability to recruit workers and bring people up here, as you might expect, it really is. But again, talking about what Sister Bay has done, I think it's really important when people come to these meetings to remind them that, like, you're not sitting on your hands, right? Like, I see people come to your input sessions and talk, and they say, you really got to do something about affordable housing. And if I'm in your shoes sitting on that board, Denise, you've been around a while on this board, might go like, we are definitely trying. Nobody else in this county has invested what Sister Bay has. And the result of that is through the infrastructure support for the Shoals, that's 45 units that are locked in at an affordable rate. And that's a lot of employees in town. I got an opportunity to go up there and meet with them and talk to someone from CHOP who has 7 employees there. So it's making a difference. Paula's project right here and the support for that project and the number of beds that will add to the village for affordable seasonal and year-round beds. You sold the lots to the housing partnership. You bought the Wiltsey property for potential use. I mean, I don't think there's any other community that can say, we've spent over $1 million to support housing in Door County. Like, I can't think of one. So you guys deserve a lot of credit for those investments and the efforts that you've put into it. And I think that gets lost a lot, and you have to keep reiterating that effort. Another thing that we looked into, I was very curious about the census data because the median household income from Sister Bay is listed at $48,000. The median age for Sister Bay, forgot what it is, I think it's now at 60 as of the 2022 community survey. And that just seems off because every surrounding community, Gibraltar, Ephraim, Liberty Grove, is around $70,000. The obvious thing that I point to is it doesn't account for all of it, but you have the only 2 long-term care facilities for aging individuals in Northern Door County. So your average age there, I talked to a representative at SCAN, the hard data I found was from 2016 that said the average age of a resident at SCAN was 83. A representative there said their guess now might be closer to 90. There's between Scandia Village and Hearthside, you have 100 to 150 residents at any given moment. So when you take 10 to 15% of your population and they're skewed that wildly to that side, those are really the centers for all of Northern Door. So you really almost have to average them out amongst all the Northern Door communities, or at least the farthest north communities, to really get a real picture of what the average age then is. I would guess that, and the reason that matters to me is how that skews your perception of your community. Because Sister Bay has always been known as the oldest community in the county and maybe the state, and depending on the measurements that year. You might actually be the youngest in the county if you adjust for those numbers and the age in those long-term care facilities. Which, I mean, is it semantics? Maybe, but it also means how do you weigh when somebody asks for a playground? You know, if someone's asking for a playground and you view yourself as the oldest community in the state, it seems like a lower priority, right? So that's why I think that data is important. It's also important in the housing discussion. But also if 10 to 15% of your population is in those long-term care facilities, it's also skewing your household income numbers. dramatically, I would guess. It won't mean that they're equal to those surrounding communities because kudos to you, you guys have built some affordable housing, which means you are the only place where someone who's making a lower level of income can live. So they're not going to Liberty Grove because they're moving into the apartments in Sister Bay, but I bet you it's not as low as that 48. If you adjust for some of these factors, I'm guessing you're probably more like in the $60,000 range for the median household income. That's still not rich, but it's not. I mean, it doesn't make sense that Sister Bay would be $24,000 lower than Liberty Grove and the surrounding communities. So that plays into like what you might want to look at in terms of what's affordable in your community for housing and your poverty data. Because again, most of the people talking to representatives from SCAN, most of their residents would qualify as living in poverty. If that's the case, because they're mostly living on Social Security income, that means that half of your people listed as below the federal poverty line in Sister Bay could potentially be in those two care centers. Again, it doesn't mean they don't exist, right? I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is from a functional community standpoint, like those care centers represent all these communities, not just yours. So if you look at that, because that can be scary when you see a 26%, a number of 26% living below the federal poverty line, that's pretty daunting, right? That's double the state average, more than. But if you actually line it up, where it's a huge outlier in the Northern Door community, and it's almost largely due to that. That's not all of it, but it's a big chunk of like that. So when you look at housing and what everyone wants to build is workforce housing. That's what we keep saying, We struggle with this on our committee because there's, what's the definition? Everyone says workforce housing and then it just becomes this much more expensive unit and everyone says, well, that's not for our workforce. So we try to say like 60 to those earning between 60 and 100%, 120% of the median household income. That's kind of how we defined it and ran some numbers based on that. And as Becky Kerwin began updating that information, even using like that 60,000 figure for Sister Bay, we actually asked ourselves if it's even worth updating all the slides we had that articulated the gap between what a median worker could afford and what's available for purchase. Because the median home sale in 2021 in Sister Bay, excluding Waterview and waterfront properties, is $371,000. It's a median home sale price in 2021. Someone making $60,000 a year or a household making $60,000 is not going to be able to afford that. That rent at today's mortgage rate with 10% down, because if you're one of these struggling workforce people, you have 20% to put down. Heck, a lot of people don't put 20% down. A lot of people put 5% down. So a 30-year mortgage at 6.9% interest is what I found yesterday. That's $2,800 a month. That's not going to happen. At $245,000 for a house, it's $1,881 a month. Because the other thing is, if you're not getting to 20% down, you're paying private mortgage insurance, so it actually jacks all those up. So the HUD standard is 30% of your income goes toward housing costs, and that includes heating and utilities. It assumes no car payment, no credit card debt, no student loan debt. I don't know how many people you all know in the workforce today that don't have those three things, right? So it's actually like, you can use that 30% figure, but then you gotta take all those particulars in. And that's what Becky did, and those are the numbers she's gonna be updating for you to show, like, here's what it is if you have essentially perfect credit and you don't have any of that debt coming out of school. And here's what it is if you just had the average debt, and how big that gap is between what you can afford and what's available in the marketplace. The highest end of the affordable level by HUD standards at 120% of median household income, based on that 60,000 figure, is $1,800 a month. So that alone is below that $245,000 house payment. The low end at 60% of the median household income is $900 a month. And again, that's no credit card, that has no car payment. That's assuming you don't have all those other bills to pay. So the actual the functional affordability of what the median household income and median worker in Sister Bay can afford is far lower than somebody, even like a $245,000 house. There'd be a huge market for that $245,000 house. It just wouldn't be your median worker in Sister Bay. So when I look at some of the things we've been talking about is if we're gonna if somehow we can build a house for 207 and sell it for $270,000 to $320,000. Again, you're not selling it to that median worker. They can't even come close. And if they do, they're probably potentially financial ruin at some point because they're gonna miss a payment. They might lose that house. And that's if their finances are perfect. So that's a scary thing. But what we came to in doing this, our research, even at 5 years ago, we really focused on the need for rentals. One big question that somebody spoke to me about, this is Marissa Downs, I'm sure she would say the same thing here. If you build, and this is not something I thought of before, but if you build and you deed restricted to people who work in Door County, and you're doing that for sale, for a home sale, so they're taking out a mortgage. What if they lose their job and they get a new job and it's outside the county? Is the bank then supposed to foreclose on the house? I don't know if that's been talked about or if that's been solved in certain banks. I know they're working on a kind of a similar project, but that's a question. My hunch is no, the bank's not going to foreclose on them, which just means that person might not be locked into your workforce. It's just an interesting question that I had not thought of at all. But the other question this person asked, like, would they even lend for it if it had that deed restriction, knowing that they'd have to foreclose on somebody if they got a different job, and knowing how much people job hop. So again, we determined that in 2019, and we reiterated this in our meeting, the major need is for a lot more rental units. At the time, the study said there were 205 needed in Northern Door. And remember, Northern Door does not just mean Sister Bay. I know Sister Bay is the only one really talking about this at a really intense level. But that's 205, and it gets a lot less daunting if you thought of Ephraim pitching in 20 and Gibraltar pitching in 40 and Bailey's Harbor doing 20 and Sister Bay doing 50, or if it averages out around the community, which is probably what it should do anyway, it's a lot less daunting. But the rates recommended from that study were $500 to $1,000 a month. The only rental, the 4 rentals I could find in Sister Bay yesterday averaged $1,461 a month. They were all 2 bedrooms. No 1 bedrooms on the market on apartment.com. There's no studios that I know of, other than Sister Bay. There's no studios that have been built except for some that were built as SDRs. I would love to see a lot of studios built. The seasonal housing need was 270 units in Northern Door County. Unfortunately, not Sister Bay, a couple other communities said no to 2 low-hanging fruit seasonal housing projects. One in Ephraim to convert an old motel to seasonal housing, and one proposal to build cabins in Bailey's Harbor for seasonal housing, workforce housing. So some people have tried. It's a hard enough thing already. It's really disheartening when people say no to stuff that they don't even have to pay for. There was some talk of potentially 40 owner occupied units, what I think was what the study said, but primarily those were needed in the $60,000 to $125,000 range based on income levels and everything. So that's where Mariah Good and the Door County Housing Partnership had tried to step in and provide that, basically single family homes for people with families who needed a place to live and wanted to put down roots. We would give them an opportunity to do that. At that time, to get it into that $100,000 to $150,000 purchase range, very simple house, some donated materials, cheap land, and $100,000 subsidy. She said that subsidy now would be at least $150,000 to even have a shot at it. So they are talking in future projects, maybe there's a different range of type of house to do that. There are other roadblocks to solving this in Sister Bay. I don't believe you allow accessory dwelling units. Former trustee Kenny Church has 2 of them on the back of his house in Sister Bay. I believe he's grandfathered in. As he told me, he goes, that's paid my mortgage. And he's crazy because he's renting them for $400. But that's helped a mechanic raise a family in Sister Bay, serve as a trustee, serve on a bunch of committees. The mechanics who we desperately need in Northern Door, and raise a family, and then his son now is a mechanic and has opened one in Liberty Grove. But that was, he was able to do that in part because of those accessory dwelling units, not to mention the fact that for these 40 years, he's had 2 apartments where local workers in the village lived that entire time. So you think of how many man hours of of employment, those accessory dwelling units served in Sister Bay, often for people who didn't have to drive to work. So there's some room there. That's not gonna solve your whole problem, but I'd take a hard look at that. And then your parking minimums, even if you allowed, and there's some community in California, I can't remember which one it was, they had allowed accessory dwelling units, but they didn't address their parking minimum. So it was like great in concept of, oh, you can turn your garage into an accessory dwelling unit. Oh, but our parking minimums require that you can't get rid of your garage, let alone put another dwelling unit in there, because now you need a parking spot for that. So again, that parking minimum prioritizes the parking space over someone having a roof over their head. So I would definitely look at that as well. Opportunities, the nice thing is, those are pretty easy roadblocks to fix. So you fix those roadblocks, you make a dent. And you have the Wiltsey property. I didn't want to necessarily be prescriptive, but like one of the things, you also have the property where you're already invested in infrastructure. You spent, Nate or Denise, do you know how much you spent on the Ava Hope? What did that cost? 1.2 million to run that little extension?
No, I don't think it was that much.
Because the county kicked in 500? 460?
What are we talking about, Cherrywood, or what are we
What's
talking?
that Cherrywood? Which one? The one that goes behind the children's center.
I believe it, I
Cherrywood?
believe it works out that to break even on those lots, we'd have to sell for 52,000. So you're looking at what we paid, what we have invested with the infrastructure and everything. If I remember right,
Yeah.
the lot value is worth 52,000 for the village to break even.
So that road, but you guys pay for it, the county pitched in for it to get that infrastructure done and run those connections to the shoals. There's still a bunch of lots up there. You have, in that little area, you have Marissa, who has built the only affordable housing project, and she still owns a lot of property there. The village owns some property there. The housing partnership owns some property there. And one other developer, who I won't name because I haven't talked to her myself, but you guys probably know who it is, that I was told also would be interested in doing something, if she could somehow do something affordably up in that area. And I mean, there's potential for several dozen, not more, units in that area when you add that all up, where you already have infrastructure. So it's cheaper for the village. So then it's cheaper to build. And that is one spot where I would see, when we looked at all this and we go, who's got infrastructure? That was a big part of this study too. And it's basically Sister Bay and Sturgeon Bay, and I think it's Maplewood that actually has sewer and water, or water. So it's random.
There's water, but I don't think it meets water quality.
But you also have that infrastructure already built, so anything you get built there is like kind of like free money in terms of housing. So I'd almost focus on what you can do there, and you have this Wiltsey property in the back pocket as you figure some of the other issues out around it. But it's kind of low hanging fruit, and you have people who have shown that they're interested or willing to do this. And it's like, how can you incentivize that? Maybe not even through money, but just maybe there's density stuff or zoning changes, anything you can make there to make it happen. But that was All right, I tried to keep that short. I rambled. I'm sorry. I know you guys got a long agenda. If anyone has questions, I'm happy to answer them, but like I said, I know you have a long agenda. I just wanted to give you guys something in the meantime until we get this thing refined and have like the granular data available.
Thank you, Miles. I think one thing that I've heard you say, or heard many times is single family houses aren't gonna take care of this problem. I think we run into that again and again and again and again. Because the economics just don't make sense, and they really can't make sense. So that's one of the big takeaways I'm glad you shared with everyone else, because you and I had many conversations on this.
And if you can build those for cap 270, there's a place for those. Like when I talked to somebody from the hospital or about, you know, maybe they could purchase deed restrictions on some of those so they could get first dibs or something, because when they were hiring on Washington Island for an administrative position, a high level position, they had somebody looking at it that wanted to take a job, and they came to them and said, where do the regular people live? They couldn't find anything under 400,000 on the island. And it's a similar thing here, where they've had a few people who were willing to come up here, and they couldn't find anything to rent or to buy. And they're not necessarily looking, those aren't the people who are in the market for the $125,000 house. But they are in the market for the $270,000 house. And that might not be the thing that you subsidize, but if you still deed restrict it and they pay full freight, that's still, maybe that actually subsidizes the cheaper housing somehow, if you can somehow do that, but.
Denise?
Thank you, Miles, for stepping up to the plate and making this presentation. And I can listen to you ramble on all evening long. You're very good at kind of following what Nate said, that we kind of keep hearing over and over again, is single family housing maybe is not our solution. And I'm wondering, with something that you said tonight, that the 2019 study reflected more of that we need rentals, but in that $500 to $1,000. And so I wonder if when we create the new committee to figure out a model for how we want to deal with whatever kind of housing out on the Wilsey property, and to be able to have it maintained as workforce housing and affordable for years to come, whatever model is suggested out of that committee. I wonder if part of that conversation shouldn't be, are we better off building the homes, renting them for reasonable prices compared to, you know, what is currently out there, so that people can save money to then go into the open market. Now, granted, it would take a while. But if you could rent a place for $1,000 a month instead of $1,800 a month, you know, would you be able to take 600 of that and save it, you know, and after a year's period of time, you're talking $7,200, 2 years time, $14,000, and so on and so on. And is it a process, is that something that we should be having a conversation about? So they don't become strapped immediately, have problems qualifying for a mortgage, jumping through all kinds of hoops to meet different criteria for the different programs that are out there for assistance. I think that'd be a good conversation to have.
I tend to land on it, and it's not that that's the way it should go, but I tend to land on the biggest obligation, both morally and economically, for our community is we need to provide a mechanism. If we decide we want a workforce and we want a thriving community and we want an economy, your obligation economically and your obligation morally for the people who are your neighbors is to at least provide them the opportunity to be able to afford a roof over their head, right? Whether or not someone can parlay that into ownership, that's like a different discussion. Not everyone, that's not a given that people want to own a home. In fact, again, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here. as we were talking, Amy Conley and Becky Kerwin, who do all this work on affordable housing, they both rent. I rented until I had kids. That's when it became a thing that I wanted a home. Like, not everybody wants that burden. So it's, but yeah, if you do, like, can we make it possible to save money?
So, based on what Denise said, I'm glad you said that. My family and I bought a home that way. We rented for about 5 or 6 years. We were paying $750 in rent. And that gave us an opportunity, those 5, 6 years, to save up a bit. And get to that point where we could afford to buy a home. Granted, you know, this was 2019 when we bought, it was a lot more affordable or whatever, but that did help. Having an option to pay affordable rent and then save up to, we were both working full-time every day, 2-3 shifts, whatever. But, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because that, you know, I can say at least in our case, and I know younger families have been in that case, it can work that way. If you have an affordable place to rent, it'll give you the opportunity to maybe in the future. Like Miles said, he started, you know, he was renting up until he had kids. And that's the case up here. We have a lot of younger couples moving up here that will eventually become parents. And if you can give them that opportunity to pay something affordable and then possibly own in the future, I can see that.
Yeah, I think that's a good conversation for that new committee to have. Just 2 other quick things. And this is for anybody on the board, or joining us tonight. Did you read the New York Times article, the Great Compression?
I have it in my inbox. I have not read it yet.
Okay, and then there was also one, from, trying to see, from The Guardian. It's called, "It's Legal, There's Just No Precedent. The First US Town to Demand a Rent Decrease." I have not read it yet, but I have it bookmarked. And I also shared it with a couple of other people, so I'm interested to see what they were able to pull off and how it's legal and whatever else. Not saying I want to go that, but I'm just throwing out those couple interesting articles.
Well, one other thing that I think you'd be interested in, Denise, is as we grow the population, this is more of like a larger visioning thing for the village. I would look into formula restaurant ordinances. Because if you built a bunch more housing and suddenly Sister-based population was say 1,500 or 2,000, I mean, you might suddenly start having to, you already had Dollar General, you had Subway before come at you. I would think ahead
Oh,
of that.
Miles, you're making my skin
I
crawl.
know, I make it happen. But if you talk about this, there's other things to consider as you add housing. And I think it's like, I don't know if anybody in this room doesn't want housing, right? But what does it mean for that? And you can be prepared for that. There are ordinances out there. There are towns that have either controlled the look of it, or outright kept them out. San Francisco did. And then it's also, you can't discuss adding a bunch of workforce housing without thinking about the childcare situation. They're tapped. They just expanded. They just did a big fund. They're in the midst of a campaign to expand just to meet the need now. So if you add all this workforce, then you finally get the housing, and then they're going to come up and go, well, I can't find childcare. So,
Yeah.
Good point.
That's another good reason to work on ADUs, because there's plenty of ADUs that do provide childcare on premise. That end up doing that way when you're generational, with the generational families there. I also want to thank you, Miles, for agreeing to serve on this housing committee. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Miles.
I haven't seen your charter yet for this.
Sir, yes,
Add to the conversation,
could I get your name and address?
Calvin Aiken. I'm gonna add to the conversation about affordable housing, because that's all I've done for 50 years. We built thousands upon thousands of apartments throughout Wisconsin, in all of the communities. I built twice in Sister Bay. my friend here, Tim Halbert, did it for us. We're behind the water tower when the go-karts are. I think we built one of the nicest apartment buildings in Sister Bay. I've also built the 48 family where we have the application for the 2 additional buildings to be added. They're being added because I'm a 25-year resident, if you will. We built our house 25 years ago in Fish Creek. So we're invested in the community. I've also built several hundred apartments in Sturgeon Bay. So I think I can address the Door County housing market quite effectively from a practical standpoint. Costs have just gone through the roof. I've applied for these 2 new apartment buildings over here behind the old Shopco. And one of the things I have is I need a cooperative village or city to help me build. Trust me, at $200,000 a year for my 2-bedroom, 2-bath units that I've asked him to build for me. There's no profit. Just do the simple math. If I get $1,400 rent, I could take the 200 grand and put it in a CD and make more money. Just a CD. We could sit down with some simple math and I could show it to you. I'm providing, I'm basically subsidizing simply because it has an estate. Those buildings will go to my kids on my school. So I'm building another 24 family, maybe, if we can get through the developers agreement, in a reasonable fashion. And I'm going to emphasize those terms, and let's put it together. I have the cash, I can do it, I can provide the 24 units. I charge about $1,400 rent, approximately, for a heated unit, brand new, 1,100 square feet. I'm building for about the price of 2019 numbers, $150 a square foot. It's very hard to come up with a nice product at that price. So you have someone sitting here in your audience who is also building another 96 family by the Target in Sturgeon Bay. I'm full. And I was just asked the question, how many people do I have that are secondary homeowners renting from me? Well, I didn't know. So I went and asked my staff. 2 or 3. I have 48 rented of the 96. I'll be done this summer. I have to charge around $1,400, but they have little fireplaces. They have separate furnaces, separate air conditioning, and they're quite stylish. If you went by a site and by the Target, you'd say, oh, they're doing a really nice job. We have irrigation systems. We go to a special effect on our landscaping. And that's been a little bit of contention on this developers agreement. I'm the only person in Sister Bay with an apartment house with an irrigation system. I'm the only one who spends money on landscaping. It matters to me. We come up here. I ride my bike by. It makes a difference for me. But you're getting into cost factors. And what's happening is the American economy is galloping away from the starter homeowner. The interest rates galloped away. Tim can attest to all of the parts put together the house have galloped away. What you need to come up with, if you want to have affordable housing, is you can either go with the rental method or you can go with the sales method. In the sales method, you have to emulate what they did in the ski towns out west. They had nobody could afford those ski towns. If you think it's expensive here, go to Vail, Aspen, Telluride, any of these places. But they came up with models that worked, and they addressed your issues. And so they would have a house that could be built that people could buy. Or they did the rental. Now, if you're going to subsidize rentals, then you have to open. If you create an environment where someone could come in and work with you and say, okay, we need, instead of my 2-bedroom, 2-baths, we need studios, or we need 1-bedroom. Someone could afford to do that and come in around your grand a month. Well, you can't come in much less. 500 is a pipe dream. That's from when maybe I was 25 years old. That's a long time ago. So you have in Door County, we've added to your housing supply. We've added, we're full up immediately. We're able to do it. It's very marginal. The only reason I can do it, I've been doing this for 50 years, so I can afford to do it. And when you're in my business, you build because you like to do stuff. You build because you want to create a good product. And like I said, it matters, our name's on it. And if you went, I don't know how many communities we built in Wisconsin. But I'm building, Rhinelander wants us to come back for the 5th time. So we have this working collaborative relationship with the people. You know, if they ask me to do something, we do it. It's not so contentious. My experience so far with the paperwork here is nothing but contentious. It shouldn't be. Let's even that out. Let's make sure that we can go build the 2 buildings, so you have 24 nice units in the town. From someone who's proven, who's already done it in your own county multiple times with no issues. You had a former person here by the name of Zeke, and he went down to Waterford. He called us up. We're doing our 3rd deal with him. Call him up. Ask him what he thinks of our projects. And my buddy who's 85, who's still gonna buy another apartment building, because that's what he's done since he's 16. He's gonna invest in the next one. So my point is, costs have absolutely killed us on the development. Ask Tim. Tim is probably one of the best affordable housing people in Green Bay. Even my niece bought a little ranch from him. My point is, there are ways to work it, but you have to do it cooperatively. It can't be contentious, because it's not worth our time. There's no real money in it. We just do it because we like to do it. And then over time, things get better. But right now, to go build apartments in Door County or Sister Bay, I would tell you that there's nobody going to be. I don't think you have any applications of my own. I don't think you do. And the reason is it's so expensive and there's no return. But we're building in Door County. We're building in Sturgeon Bay. Sturgeon Bay came up with a TIF program for us. That helped us out a little bit to get over some of the costs. So they helped us out. I've asked for nothing, Sister Bay. Up in Rhinelander, a real big tip. Many of the towns, Clover, big tips. Many of the towns we go to, tips. That helps. But even that isn't getting over high costs, high interest rates.
Okay.
And that's what it's gonna be. But there are mechanisms to make what you want to work. There are mechanisms out there.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Miles. Appreciate that.
He's coming back next month with his plan for $1,000 studio. They're like.
I think that to address that specific question, then I would need the village's help to design an apartment that I could build so that I wouldn't have to charge more than $1,000. That doesn't mean then that I can have an attached garage. That's a luxury. That means no potential. There are a lot of rules and regulations that we run across that prohibit us from building affordable housing, or the lot size is too big. Lot sizes in Telluride, Colorado were very small because the land was so expensive. But they were able to put it together and cluster it. And it looks beautiful. They did a good job. So there are examples out there. It can be done.
Okay. Thanks, Gal. All right. We will move on to ordinances, and these, a number of these are the second time they're coming back. I don't want to curtail discussion, but I also don't want to discuss things that we don't necessarily need to because of the long agenda. So we're going to try and go through this a little quickly. If you have questions, feel free to do that. I just don't want to take any longer than we have. Okay, 2A. abolish combined office of village clerk treasurer.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Bordeaux, second by Champeau, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. The amendment for the clerk treasurer references.
So moved.
Motion by Bordeaux, second by Roscoe, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. C, municipal code amendments regarding forfeitures, fees, and Treacher's errors.
So moved.
Motion by Bordeaux,
Second.
second by Roscoe, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. D, cable franchise.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Bordeaux, second by Champeau. Those in favor?
Aye.
I think
Oh,
it was all
sorry,
five, right?
Warner. Okay, aye, all those opposed, motion carries. Okay, this one probably needs a little bit of conversation, I suspect, not that I will. So then we're on to E, the coal tar sealants. Good,
Sure, as the staff report says, this was, referred back to committee to look at possibly adding language about what we would not, what would not be considered a PAH sealant. And it was after doing research, the committee found that Dean Hoger from the Clean Water Action Council said, actually, we shouldn't do that because if you miss something, then somebody could go through and put that product with the PAHs in their, or on their driveway. So the committee did make a small amendment, as you saw here. And other than that, it is ready to go.
My only, do we want where it says D and E, it says within county or municipality, do we want that just to say Sister Bay? Page 53, it's also below again. Letter D, in parentheses at the end, it says county or municipality. Like it was just copy and pasted. Do we want that to be Sister Bay or?
we should probably say within the village, right?
Yeah, so for D and E, and that's also below on page 56.
Good catch.
D and E.
And actually, we saw that and forgot to make a change. So I'm glad you got that.
I was also looking at page 57 under exemptions. I just thought B, I don't know if we need the word if right there at the beginning. I thought I could just say, or the person does not intend to apply the sealant within municipal boundaries instead of, or if the person does not.
We could all say about there. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And my last thing was, do we want a minimum prison sentence here? The violator shall be subject, this is at the end of penalty on page 57. Upon default of payment, the violator shall be subject to imprisonment for not less than 30 days. I was not so sure about that. I don't really like minimum prison sentences.
I'd be good if it just said not more than 100 days.
Yeah.
You never know if there's gonna be something really egregious,
True,
but I agree with you on the minimum.
yeah, that's my thought.
Anyone else? Okay, do I have a motion? Motion by Roscoe has amended,
Was amended. Second?
second by Warner, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, F. The ordinance regarding business regulation, advertising, short-term rental.
Sure, this is just introducing it, and if we're okay with it, then we bring it back next month for adoption. It's basically, adding language to our code to reflect what the tourism zone does and what state statutes do regarding advertising a unit for rent. And this came up because somebody said, well, why can't I advertise it before I have a license? And I'm like, well, you need the license first, because they could advertise it as a 10-bedroom, or I'm sorry, you know, a 10-person unit, and by the time they get our license, maybe we only allow 5. So it was like, no, you need the license first. That's what the state does, and that's what the tourism zone does. So this just makes it clear in our code that you have to have the license before you advertise.
I'm curious, so if, right now, do people have their licenses for the summer season? No, so people cannot advertise for summer if they don't have the license right now?
But they already have, they have a license, so, where we run into the problem is somebody has never had a license, they've never been through the process, they don't know a brand new.
Oh,
They
so
don't-
brand new license, not like they're not licensed for the current year that they're advertising.
Let's clear that up. Let's clear that up. That's a great
Yeah.
point. So if somebody has a license from 2023, that would have expired when,
Until June.
June.
31st.
of this year.
And then what they'll do is, so their current license will expire June 30th. And beginning in March, they can apply for one that becomes effective July 1st. So,
But I don't think that's clear in here. When I read it, I didn't catch that. It made
And
it
it-
seem like if your license isn't current, you don't get to advertise.
And is it, and advertising includes what, placement on VRBO or Airbnb, those are considered advertisements? Because people, I think they just have their houses on there all the time, you know, and then
Yeah.
renew, they renew the certifications, so.
How I would look at that, I mean, to clearly define as any publicly accessible listing.
I guess it doesn't say current, so maybe that needed.
And I also didn't read this as that that's a Wisconsin state statute. It's the state statute only defines what a short-term rental is. But it's a tourism zone that's adopted that statute, not the state.
so the state statutes, what they talk about is when they talk about short-term rental, they define it as a residential dwelling that is
Yeah.
offered.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they don't say anything about advertising or anything. They
right,
don't care.
Offered.
It's just the
Yeah.
tourism.
I would agree with that now.
Yeah.
So we'd like to see some clarification on those items.
Or maybe it's, maybe it doesn't say it has to be for the. It says a license issued, so if the license is issued, it doesn't say which year the license is for.
It just says a license is required, so you're gonna need an active license, right? To own, manage, advertise for rent, or operate a short-term rental. At least one day, at least one night each year, is what it says.
Because Don, I wasn't so sure about this when it first came up, but bringing it in line with the tourism zone because they ultimately do a lot of enforcement effectively for the village. I mean, like, they don't, but if we change our standard from what they have, that gets us out of alignment with them. I think that'd be a little bit challenging for us. But I definitely had some reservations when I first saw it. The question I had in my head is, when does commerce start? That's where my head went to. Does commerce start when you advertise it? Or does commerce start when you first rent it?
I do
Oh, I just didn't, I never expected, like, I didn't, this is something that just. I guess did we have an issue with people advertising in the past? You know, just, where do these things come from sometimes?
We had one person who represents different properties challenge us on it. And, you know, I made the determination, I said, I have to interpret the code the best I can. And I am determining that if you are advertised, you need the license to advertise it for rent. And I based that on where the code was written and then the offered for rent part in the statutes and then what the tourism zone was doing. And I'm like, we need to clean it up then. If we're getting challenged on something, we should clean it up so it's very clear. So staff doesn't have to make those interpretations.
Understood, it's just that nobody's in violation. Of renting their property until they rented it if they don't have a certificate, not from talking about it.
They're in violation of the tourism.
So do we need our own
But that-
statute if they're in violation of the tourism zone already? Do we need our own language?
Now, hold on, because sometimes they get the tourism zone permit, but they don't get our license.
Yeah, and they can accept money payment or deposit for a summer, and they don't have a license yet. That's doing business without a license.
And that's, in my head, that's what triggered it, is when does that commerce occur? Because that's what the license.
So that's why they
in my
should
head,
not be
that's-
allowed to advertise without a license.
How quickly do we issue licenses when somebody applies?
So because we accept them from March to May, we try to have them all issued by the end of May. Where we run into problem there are those that come late. And last week of June, they want their license by the next day or by the next week, because they're renting for July 4th. Those are the problem ones. The other ones, we do get them about a month before the license actually takes effect. It's all up to the owner. The sooner they apply, the sooner we get them that license. Also, I can honestly say, if you get it in the beginning of March, where there's not a lot of them, we can review it quicker and get it out the door.
But if they already have the license for 2023, it doesn't. You're saying it doesn't really matter, they can advertise.
They have an active.
Because
Right, they already have a
Okay,
license.
so as long as that's clear, maybe that should be clarified.
Could they ever, but if their license expires June,
June
is there?
30th.
Can they advertise right now for the fall?
Yes, they have a
Yes,
license.
They have a
We have a
license.
Under their current license, even though they may not have a license, that
They're gonna renew.
allows them for in the fall.
Yep, because it says you have to have a license to advertise, so as long as they have that license, they can be advertising out for the fall or 2 years from now.
Again, if we're in line with the tourism zone, that seems to make some sense to me, and then again. The other thing is, to Patrice's point, is like, when you start taking money in. That's when the commerce happens, for sure, in my opinion. That's where you're actually participating in active commerce. That's pretty impossible to figure out when that's happening. You know, when that money is exchanging hands from our perspective.
I need to deliver a service. But they give you money anytime they want, but
Okay,
not an exchange of service for it.
I can see that perspective on it, you know.
I don't care, quite frankly, it just seems weird that if somebody has a license now, that they can, just go, okay, great, I can book for the next 3, 4, 5 years, and they don't, and then their license is.
I
Like
think,
they've collected money that they may not even have a license for, a certificate for from the village, once their current one expires. It just seems like that's just the way. Solve the problem that isn't a problem, but. I mean, is the tourism zone coming down on us for this? Is that something that's happening?
no.
I
Okay,
think we're just trying to alleviate staff from interpreting.
well, yeah, speaking of that. We probably ought to talk about our fee at some point too, because we don't have anybody that we've hired and we're gonna be exposed to that issue for auditing. So.
Isn't that on our agenda?
No,
It's not on this agenda.
I read it somewhere.
because at this point, I mean, we're, gonna be,
We just gotta be careful, we should stay on the agenda, item, Don. I don't disagree with you, but
well, it's all, yeah, okay.
Denise, you probably saw that in some minutes
Oh, minutes.
where it was discussed.
Yeah, we talked about it last board meeting to not bring up again.
So move it forward or revise it, what do we want to do?
Is there a way that we could just add some simple, because this is our first take at this?
Yes.
So it has to come back anyway. So would it be simple enough to say the first initial license? The first application? Just add that verbiage somewhere and that
Yeah. I think so.
may address Don's question.
Yeah, because I mean, once you place something in.
Yeah.
VRBO and Airbnb, you sort of set it there. It's there. So now pull it back and put it in. It's just gymnastics, yeah.
I'll have to play with the wording a little bit, but I'll make sure that's clear.
Maybe have a current valid short-term rental.
Is that a correction, Billy?
Yeah.
Okay. Then you'll see that come back.
Next one.
Okay. All right, then on to resolutions. Resolution 9A, recognizing years of service for Marge Witzmacher on the Library Commission.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Shampoo. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Resolution accepting the housing study and conceptual plot completed by Stantec Consulting. Do we really have to accept this? I mean, what does that do when we accept them? Yes, we saw it. Is that just saying that, yes, we saw it? Or is it binding the village in any way when you say we
It's
accept
a
it?
plan, so it doesn't bind you to anything. It's like the facilities plan. You put a contract out, you spent the money to have a plan done. You're acknowledging it's not complete. This is what they presented to you.
Okay,
I was thinking the same thing, because I wasn't real hot on accepting it.
yeah.
Our contract is done with that, right? So there's really nothing else that where you need.
Right, now they have offered to stay on and help us with some things, but as far as the contract, that ended, end of December.
What happens if we don't accept it? Anything?
No, it's, nothing happens, I don't think you'd wanna reference it or use it. I think somebody could argue, you haven't even accepted that, why are you using the data out of there? I think it's kind of a political thing where you took $50,000 taxpayer, didn't take. You used 50,000 taxpayer dollars to complete a study that you commissioned. The guy, they performed the contract, they did exactly what you asked them to do. You have to acknowledge the work is done and accept it. Now, does that mean you follow it? That's up to you.
Well,
We have a
because
lot
the
of things we don't
resolution
follow.
says adopting a workforce housing study,
Yeah,
not accepting.
accept or adopt, we can change that wording if that's how you prefer it to be worded, but. Plans are usually adopted or accepted by resolution. Not ordinance.
I'll make a motion to accept.
Change it with the accepted instead of adopted. Motion by Berto,
Second.
second by Roscoe. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, on to 9C, resolution authorizing the issuance not to exceed $1 million in general obligation promissory notes. Not sure.
Sorry.
So with me tonight is Justin Fisher from Bear, sorry. I don't know if this comes on there. So we are looking at accepting or moving forward with the debt service for the Public Works Building. This issuance would be for $4 million. And I'm gonna actually let Justin go into his presentation.
Thanks, Tasha. Excuse me, it's great to see everyone. It's been a few years since I've been here with COVID and everything, so it's great to be back up here and presenting in front of you. So this is really a culmination of a lot of years in the making to get to this point. Started working with Tasha back in 2017, where we started looking at how are we going to fund future capital projects. And because at that particular time, when we were looking at things, the village really didn't have the borrowing capacity to be able to get a lot of things done. And so it really was a conscious effort by Tasha, the village board, administrator, to ultimately try to pay down debt over the next several years since 2017. And really, only borrow for as much as you absolutely need to during that period of time, because we knew that this time was going to come where these capital projects were going to need to be borrowed for. And so, that's kind of the precedent of how we got to this point. And I think on the last slide, it's a good illustration for everyone to see where you were to where you are to where are you now. And it's really because of those valuation increases and paying down the debt and being able to kind of make everything work in addition to the tax increment district, number one, becoming now self-sufficient. So if we go into this presentation packet, page number 2, the first issuance will be a $4 million note anticipation note. Think of this as the construction financing for the public works building. So this is really going to kickstart the project, get you the funding to be able to get the project going, pay the invoices and so forth. And then over the next 6 to 12 months, as project costs are finalized and done, that's when we're going to look at potentially refinancing the construction note into longer term financing, because ultimately we don't want you to borrow for more than what you absolutely need to on a long-term basis. Ideally, this project comes in less than 4 million when it's all said and done, and we can apply any excess money to reduce the long-term borrow. The nice thing about the construction note right now, which is unique in our world, but we've kind of seen it over the last really year, is that short-term rates are very attractive from the investment standpoint. So while you're able to borrow at, say, a 5% interest rate, you're able to invest that money at a 5. Right now, the LGIP is at a 5.40%. So you're actually able to earn more than what you're borrowing for. You can do that as a municipality as long as you spend down the proceeds within 2 years. So as long as you've spent all the money within 2 years, you can keep all the excess money that you've earned. So that's kind of a unique thing that we haven't seen in the marketplace for many, many years. And it's kind of unique to right now. Now, obviously, the Fed continues to talk about, when are they going to reduce interest rates? Originally they were talking March. That shot down interest rates at the end of last year. Well, now, there's new economic data coming out every day that is kind of pushing that potential first Fed reduction to now potentially June. And as more economic data comes out, it's going to be, at what point do they pull the trigger and hopefully start reducing those interest rates? So it's going to be kind of a combination of all those different factors. Plus, once your audit is finalized this summer, and then the valuations come out in August, that's when we're going to really take a deep dive and say, okay, where do we stand? Does it make sense right now to refinance and lock in the long-term rates? So there's a lot of moving pieces to the puzzle, and that's what Tasha and I are going to be working on over the next 6 to 12 months here. So as far as the interest rates, again, 5% potential rate for the construction note, longer term financing, 4.75. Ideally, these are both conservative, but as we go out to the market, we'll get those locked in. The max parameter rate for the construction note, 5.75, and then the same thing with the long term. And again, ideally we come in much less, but again, it's a very volatile market, and I wish I had control over that rate, but it goes out to the market and they ultimately dictate the rate that you receive. So the timeline here, village board considers the plan of finance and parameters resolution tonight. This gives the authority of the final sign off on sales to the village administrator or finance director. And then ultimately, over the next month, we're going to be getting everything prepared to send it out to the marketplace for them to evaluate and potentially bid on it. The closing would occur April 2nd of 2024. And then at that point, the construction commences and, we start seeing a building being built. And then come late summer, that's when I said, we talk about looking at doing the takeout of the construction note into the longer term financing. The great thing going into this that I was really excited about, I think Tasha was, obviously as well, was we were able to get a bond rating upgrade at the end of last year. So that's huge as we go into these capital borrowings here. So you were at an A1 bond credit rating, and because of paying down the debt and being very frugal, getting your reserves up, having the tax increment district become healthy, they felt comfortable in upgrading the village to the AA3 bond credit rating, which is kind of in that more high grade category. So that's a nice jump and very welcomed, because it is going to help with the interest rate that you receive when you go out to the marketplace. So if the market's strong, potentially in September, that's when we go out and lock the interest rates and then pay off and close potentially in September or October. So that's that's kind of the timeline there. So the next page, page 3, there's a lot of numbers on this page. I'm not gonna go through it in a ton of detail. I'll kind of walk you through the summary here. So the left side of the page, that's your existing debt payments on an annual basis. So that's all the levy supported debt. You can see that there's a nice drop from 2024 to 2025, and then it's gone by 2031. In 2025, that's when tax increment district number 1 essentially becomes self-sufficient to be able to pay their portion of the debt service tied to that tax increment district. That's important because that's going to be a couple $100,000 influx that you didn't have before, that you were levying for that debt payment. That creates a really nice drop in the debt service to be able to fund this long-term capital plan that we have. So then you look in the center of the page, and that blue area, that's what we're talking about tonight. Then we wanted to look, into the future and try to model out some of these future other projects, so we take everything into account. So we've got the broadband financing in there, being taken out over a longer period of time at a certain point. We've got the administration building in there. Again, all potential hypothetical, but it's all in here. And then the Mill Road Triangle project. So the tax increment district, because in years past, it wasn't self-sufficient. So you actually levied for those debt payments because it was general obligation debt. Well, now that it's doing much better and it's self-sustaining, it can actually start paying back the debt service fund, which then will be used to help offset future debt service payments. So it's really a combination of different pieces to be able to get us to a point where if you look to the far right side of the page, that combined debt service amount, you're at 850,000, and we're going to try to keep it, from fluctuating up and down. So keeping it in 2025 at the $850,000, and then you can see a drop in debt service that may take place starting in 2026, and that factors in all these capital projects that we're talking about tonight. So that's the long-term plan, and then I think the exciting thing here is on page 4, because municipalities in Wisconsin are allowed to borrow up to 5% of your equalized valuation for general obligation debt. Now, obviously, you don't want to go right up to that 5% at any point, but when you look to the left side of this page, the black bars there, that was your existing debt payments, essentially, on a yearly basis. And as you can see, it goes down over time because you're paying it off. The gray bars is what you had in available borrowing capacity. So in 2017, you had about 27% remaining capacity, not a whole lot of room there to be able to fund any large capital projects. So this is where we worked on a strategic long-term plan here to try to get this gray bar to grow. Now, a lot of things have worked in the favor, and we could control trying to pay down the debt as well as we could and not borrow for any significant capital projects. What's helped in our favor is that the valuation of not only Sister Bays, but communities all over the state of Wisconsin have grown significantly over the last couple of years. Sister Bay grew by a significant portion. That's what's allowed this gray bar at the end of 2023 to have now a capacity of, say, $31 million. And so now in 2024, that's when we potentially start implementing this long-term capital plan. And you can see how we kind of stacked in the potential future borrowings in there to take everything into account. And when you look at this, using a growth factor of 2% to your valuation, it still shows about 60% remaining capacity at any point in time. And so when Moody's and the rating agencies sees this, they see the long-term plan here. They see what you have coming down the pipeline, and they're very comfortable with the plan as presented here. And that's part of the reason why the village was able to get the bond rating upgrade. So it's really a kudos to everyone here in this room to get to this point.
Anybody have any questions? I know that's a lot to throw at everybody. I know it's confusing. There are a lot of moving pieces. I think the things we really, really want to stress are that tax impact. you know, this is what we have planned on. We talked about this at finance when we talked about budgeting. That when we were looking at these projects, we were looking at ways to do these projects without additional tax burden from anyone. And by using that TID payment to cover its own debt and to flow back into the debt service fund, we're able to accomplish that. That's huge, so.
I'll make a motion, we approve resolution number 2024-004, resolution authorizing the issuance of not to exceed 4 million general obligation promissory notes and authorizing the issuance and establishing parameters for the sale of not to exceed 4 million note anticipation notes in anticipation thereof.
Second.
Motion by Bertle, second by Roscoe. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, and then D. What is the difference between C and D, Tasha?
The difference between C and D, C is the short-term funding. You're authorizing the general obligation refunding bonds in D.
Okay.
Instead of the note.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2024-005, resolution authorizing the issuance and establishing parameters for the sale of not to exceed 4 million general obligation refunding bonds.
Second.
Motion by Bertle, second by Jean-Paul. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Thank you for reading all of that out.
Can I just say something neat?
Thank you, everyone.
Tasha and Baird, you did a wonderful job trying to figure out how we were gonna pay for everything on our wish list. Very talented. Thank you for figuring it out.
Okay. 10A. Contract for a cherry crop at the Wiltsey property. So this came to you because we're not likely to make any changes on the Wiltsey property this year, so we said, well, if we're not gonna do that, we should keep going with the various contracts out there.
The only question on this is what do you charge for the rent? We've been charging them $750. Based on what we charge the other people, it seems a little high, so the board just has to decide. You know, I drafted it to say $500, but in the past it has said $750. When you compare it to.
But
the-
$750 wouldn't have been high if you upped the other ones for hay.
True, but I think that's a lot for hay.
What is the cost, how much can you sell it, pound of cherries for versus like a bale of hay?
There's also no sunk cost on hay because it's an annual crop, so like you have to have the cherry trees there for so many years. But I guess I understand why that is. At the same point, the amount of money we're talking about is pretty insignificant.
What did they pay last year, Julie?
$750. You do have, now you do have to understand they are maintaining the property for, so they are spraying the trees, they're making sure they're protected. They also let you go out there, pick your own cherries if you want. But we just have to decide on that number, like I said, it's.
So any resident in the village could pick their own cherries on it?
No owner of.
It did say that.
Trustees.
Wow, I'm not comfortable with that. That's not,
What's that?
the trustees could go pick cherries, that's.
The contract has always said that the trustees or the employees could pick cherries out there.
It says the landowner, so isn't the village the landowner? Does that mean everybody in the village can go pick cherries?
No,
I mean, what does landowner mean? And that's what it says in the contract.
the landowner means the board, because you're responsible for that.
Okay.
I-
I'm not going to that.
I didn't put it in there, so I've been in there.
I'm not going.
I'm not gonna.
There we go.
I think if the employees wanna go pick cherries, I think that
Yeah, I think it's a
would be
good point.
fantastic.
500, so
Yeah.
500, so
Second.
By Count, second by Roscoe.
I guess so, but I don't understand why we're not doing $750 like before. It's $250. It's $250. It's half of a.
We just borrowed 4 million.
Okay, so we have.
Just wait till the next one at 100. Let's move right through these.
Okay.
All those in
Sounds
favor?
great.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, the hay crop.
the hay crop, this is for the hay crop on Wiltsey, and in the past, we charged them $100. So the contract would say the same.
Summer.
Roscoe, second by Shampo, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. We cut a crop on log request.
Yep, pay crap on log request. I doubled down because it is a significantly, it's a much larger parcel than the one that, Mr. Collins is doing.
So moved.
Second.
By Riddle, second by Roscoe, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay. Contract forward. Typical site design parks maintenance facilities surrounding area Stantec.
Okay, so as it explains, Parks Committee had a recommendation, we hired Stantec for some work, Plan Commission had a recommendation, we hire them, and Stantec said, but then have all these contracts, can we just have an agreement like I do in other municipalities where for a certain amount of money every month, we are basically on call to do your work. If there's a special project, we treat it as a task order, but, what they are recommending is it is $3,000, not to exceed $3,000 a month. If they don't go through $3,000 in services, we don't charge them that. Or I'm sorry, they don't charge us that. But it's, they have been, I will say they've been at, I think, every planning commission meeting or parks meeting for quite a while. And they've been doing that. They haven't been charging us.
But
for
not
most of-
necessarily who should have been at the meetings,
Yeah,
just a representative.
Yeah,
He
I mean,
came, he was on one with, on the Zoom.
but aside from the housing.
Yeah, there was a,
Aside from the housing study, they've been at trail planning meetings and they've been pretty engaged. Didn't mean to cut you off, Denise, so.
it's okay.
So we could just ask for individual contracts like the communities asked for. Stantec was saying, you know, this is what other communities do, maybe you want to consider this. So that's the contract that's before you is the municipal services agreement they recommended.
so who's gonna decide if they should be at a meeting? Because that's where the cost is gonna go up, is when we have meetings and sometimes they go for hours. You know, I would think that the committee chair of that committee would confer with you, Julia, as we want somebody at that meeting for it.
Well, so some of the meetings that they wouldn't charge you per meeting, but some of them were, they've been asked to do the civil site design, meet with the architect. That's all included in that 3,000. They were asked to be on the housing committee for the Wiltie property, provide guidance.
But
That's-
not necessary, I don't think, in my opinion, that they would have to be at those beginning meetings. If we're talking about what type of housing we want to have out there and what kind of model we're going to use, I don't know that as talented as Skylar is as an engineer, again, that's not his wheelhouse. So I don't think that he would be at a lot of those meetings.
And that's what I say, like, that's where the committee chair would confer and say, yeah, we want them at this meeting or not, because that can end up being a lot of hours really quick.
Correct.
And they're not always, I mean, there might be a plan commission meeting where we do want them there, but
Yep.
that's probably gonna be an outlier. It's not, we're not gonna want to show up every single time.
Sure, and then he has, if we want him to do certain things like survey requests, road ratings, minor civil site design. So that would all be in that not to exceed 3,000. And then, like I said, there are task orders for individual jobs, which are the civil site design we wanted for the public works building. Design a trail, for example, something like that, that costs money, so. He felt it actually costs less this way, and he said this is what other municipalities are doing, so. Bailey's Harbor does this.
So moved.
Second,
Motion by Riddle, second by Shampo, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
So that was Dean.
That also took care of E.
Yep, Dean.
So then contract for architectural design for the parks facility.
Okay, so this is, so the Parks Committee solicited for proposals for an RFP. They they reviewed 7 responses and they have recommended McMahon. I was to ask McMahon some questions, you know, could you do extra services for us, which is outlined in the staff report. They said, yeah, we can do that. There's no extra charge on that. So I did include a contract. I do have 2 minor changes to that contract if you're inclined to approve it.
Can we know what those changes are before we?
Sure,
approve it?
sure, okay. So the first one is, where it says, whereas the consultant has provided a bid for said services, the cost of which shall not exceed $193,000. They just wanted added that says without prior approval of the village, so you can't exceed $193,000 unless the village agrees that you can. That's minor, I think that.
Yep.
That's.
And when you say the village, that means it comes back here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the other one was on terms of agreement. It talks about the term and how, when they have to be done. They added standard language. I don't know why it wasn't in our template, because I've seen this in other our contracts. It says consultant shall not be responsible for delays caused by factors beyond the consultant's reasonable control, including but not limited to delays because of strikes, lockouts, work slowdowns or stoppages, government ordered industry shutdowns, power servers outages, and they list the, and I can read them all, but they list the reasons why they would not be, why it would be beyond their control.
We've had that, that's been pretty standard. In
It's been
other-
really standard. I don't know why it wasn't in the template. So I mean, it's, those were the two changes.
I would like,
Usually under force majeure, or is that, or they're being more specific than that?
I think it's, the last one we had was pretty specific.
Okay.
I think it just makes it very clear.
I have an additional ask, which is on page 149. Number 3, the committee wants no staff level meetings and all meetings held at the committee level. That means staff and the committee. They would like 4 to 6 meetings, and McMahon said, we will offer up to 6 meetings, which includes 1 board meeting, and 1 meeting will be in person, but all other meetings are virtual. I'd like to know, do you know what meeting will be in person that they're talking about? Are they talking about the final presentation to the board?
I do not know that, Denise.
Okay,
I
because
did-
I would like, as head of Parks and Plan, that the initial meeting that we have with them, that it be in person. That we get to see face to face, shake their hands, all sit around a table and have that initial meeting. Just so we get to know who everybody is rather than just on a screen, and then it can be virtual from there. But I think working together as closely as what I hope that we will be, that it would be important to have a face-to-face first.
So you're saying that one face-to-face will be the initial? Or you're saying an
Well,
additional?
I think if they're presenting something to the board, that should also be
Okay.
in person. I just don't know what they were referencing with the 1 meeting in person. So if they would be amenable to that, or if nobody else agrees with me on the board.
They're, where are they based out of? Somewhere in the 920 area code. I looked to see their phone number, but I didn't look to see their address.
I agree. I think that we should meet them first, that first
Well,
meeting.
Appear maybe.
Find out.
So then it's not, we're not asking a ton for them to come up there. And now you're saying the initial, that would be parks, or you're saying the initial with the board, or would that be a parks plan? I mean,
It would be, because all the meetings are gonna be with parks and staff.
Okay.
So it would be with parks and staff, the first meeting that we sit down after the contract is signed.
okay,
So I can change this, it'd be changing the 1, 2, 3, 4th whereas to indicate that the initial meeting shall be in person with the Parks Committee. And I can request that final one be in person with the board as well.
I mean, don't you think that's important? I mean, I just, from what we recently went through with the presentation from Zoom, I don't think it's acceptable when we're spending $193,000.
I think it's good to have our expectations very clear up front.
Very clear.
I was gonna say, our past 2 experiences have not been the best.
And in their, the consultant's defense, that's the way we wrote it. So let's be very clear if that's what we.
I would agree with you, James.
Thank you.
we'd want somebody to approve it with those, changes that I read, which were recommended by the attorney, and then the, changes regarding the meetings that Denise mentioned.
So moved.
Motion by Roscoe,
Second.
second by Cox, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, on to 11A,
What page might we be on?
218.
218, thank you.
Okay, so this is the conditional use that came back from plan. I think we've already heard some from Cal, but I suspect you'd have something more you want to say on this.
On the apartments. I think we want to approve, subject to the developers agreement. But just two things in a developers agreement, there are lots of little nuanced things. I'm an English major, my attorney's a wordsmith. Let's just forget all those. The two items I'd just like to address and ask for reasonable language. One is, if a piece of paper from our parcel flies into the neighbor's yard, 4-hour notice, weekend notice. Tim's here, he'll be in charge of the construction. I have a landscape person up here, Bart Olson, who I can also ask, but Bart is deaf, so he's not gonna be able to take phone calls. But he can take a text, I can ask him to oversee it, I can have local people. I've never had an issue on any of my sites, I've never had an issue here in Sister Bay.
So I want to be careful here because I don't want a dialogue to happen out in the audience, but I want to address this one right away because I know there's an individual who has information on that specific issue.
But just two items.
Okay.
One is, if you could address the rubbish in a reasonable fashion, whatever your attorney would agree to, be fine with us. He's a reasonable person, we close with him twice. So, very simple. Second item is landscaping. I can't allow anybody other than us, the builders, to be on the site. So the idea of hiring a local landscaper, and who are you gonna find? I can't even get Nick Meissner over to my house most times because he's too busy. I've asked him to do trees over at the site. I couldn't get anyone, so I hired someone from Oshkosh, spent 50 grand, added a whole lot of trees on our site. My point is, we're gonna do a really good job. We're willing to escrow the monies. If we don't finish it, I don't know, if a rainstorm comes in October and they can't get the trees in or whatever the case might be, I'll escrow the money. That's not a problem. But I can't allow, and it's a deal breaker, for me to have a third party come in, unknown to me, unvetted to me. I don't even know if they have insurance. I think if you asked your attorney what liability you would incur by bringing someone onto a developer's site to finish it, it just seems it's so unnecessary. Maybe it's necessary if you have problems with someone, but you've never had problems with me. And you've never had any problems with my developments in your village. So all I ask is for some reasonableness. And if we can have some reasonableness, we can pull permits and we can start constructing. If this is just a method to say, Cal, don't build, just tell me that. I'll walk out the door, you'll never see me again. If that's the method, but I don't get that sense here. I get the sense that you're all really well-meaning. And you want to get some affordable, good quality housing in the community. And it's very difficult to get done. So I just have these two requests. Be reasonable that if a piece of paper flies from a site that I have a little bit of time to go pick it up, I'll happily do it. And be reasonable that allow me to finish the project. If there's some difficulties with the landscaping, or you know how it is with weather. And just do it in a proper means. And work with your attorney. We've worked with him in the past, never had an issue with him. He's stellar. He knows what he's doing. So that's it. If you don't want me, just tell me to go.
Okay. Thanks. So I've heard the garbage issue is something that I would, Steve, would you be willing to speak to that to us, not to Cal? Minor distinction, but an important distinction, about your experiences on there, because this is something, I don't know if you've talked at the board level, but I know you've talked at planning commission about some of the challenges that as the construction happened.
Yeah, during the initial phase, when the 48 units were initially built, we didn't really anticipate any problems. Buildings look fine, work's progressing along. But then when it gets windy, we're starting to find things like scraps of house wrap on our yard, they're caught in the trees on our property. There were like wrapping paper from probably roof shingles that got blown over there, and you understand, the guy working the roof, he gets away fine. But then somebody's got to pick it up. And what was happening with the first phase is the stuff wasn't getting picked up. And at first we thought, well, we'll be a nice guy and we'll just pick this stuff up and throw it across the property line and got away from somebody. Well, this went on for weeks. And there was house wrap, foam board, styrofoam food containers. And probably it's all caught in the wind. But it's in our yard, you can see the stuff laying there. Some of it's 150 feet into our property and nobody's picking it up. That's what got me mad. And then after that initial construction took place, about maybe halfway through it, then I was out in our back property one day and I'm watching these guys throw cardboard into the dumpster. And the dumpster is already overfilled. You can't get any more in there. And they're continuing to throw this cardboard. They're hauling out of the back of a van and throwing on top. And then half of it's sliding off. And I just walked up and I says, is anybody in charge here? What's going to happen to all this stuff? And the guy just says, well, I don't know who's in charge. He says, so where do you find somebody? He says, I don't know. And so I just walked away. And sure enough, about a week or two later, there was some more cardboard laying there. So after that all got done, we thought, well, okay, the construction's done. People are moving in. They seem well behaved. Not a problem. Then we started having problems with trash from, I guess, the dumpster, because we were starting to get different things, grocery bags, aluminum foil, and some of this was probably left on our property from people trespassing into the yard, walking the dogs, I guess. We were finding fresh dog poop and liquor bottles and other stuff. And so then this went on, and they talked to the manager, and she said, well, she'd say something, she'd take care of it, and nothing really happened. The snow was being pushed into our yard too. That was maybe 15 to 20 yards of the crack. She said she'd take care of that. That didn't happen until just this past season. And everybody's saying, well, this isn't our garbage. It came from someplace else. Well, there isn't anybody else within probably a half a mile of us that have garbage cans outside, during garages or stuff like that. And I think it was last fall, my wife went out there, she's picking some of this stuff up, and some of it is discarded mailing stuff, and it's got Glen Road address on it. So we know where it's coming from. And then I think she had called Julia some last fall because there was a plastic garbage bag caught in one of our trees and with some aluminum foil laying around. And then we didn't get a chance to see if any of the foil and stuff got picked up, but then it snowed. Well, the trash bag is still in the tree, and that was what, 3 months ago? And all I heard from somebody at the planning commission here with Julie said that they just said, oh, we operate a very clean premises and that can't be coming from us. And at one point, the manager for the apartment complex did try to go and say that it was coming from the Shopko property. But we've been there for 15 years. Never had anything coming from the Shopko property. So it's never any trash in our yard. Occasional beer party from the kids in the neighborhood. Okay, they could take care of that, talk to the parents. That all ended. But this whole thing with the trash and that's what's getting irritated. And we're not up there, I feel, to go and pick up the trash and do this maybe every couple of weeks and walk around the place and pick this stuff up. And for a while, I was picking it up and I was throwing it in our garbage cans when it was all first started, when the building construction first started. And basically, we're paying to have it hauled away. And finally, I just got fed up after about a month or so. We just started throwing it back across the property line. And it's like, hey, you guys get the message here, guys, and you got to pick up after yourself. Your mother won't be in today. So that's kind of where it's at. And the frustration just comes from, if it's a construction job or even if it's present tenants that are throwing loose trash into the dumpster, and the guy with the truck goes and lifts the dumpster into the air to dump it into the truck, and it's a really strong wind and it carries into the yard, well then know that it was a really windy day. Somebody walk around and see what's going on and pick the stuff up. That's all we're asking.
So I guess that just for Cal, maybe you'd understand we weren't looking for a problem. It's a problem that has been brought to us. And I'm gonna guess you're the kind of guy that did not know that was happening. And I suspect you hearing about that means that will never happen again. It's just my inclination based on what you've said tonight.
My comment is that, for 95% of it, I'm in agreement with him. I don't have a problem with, my neighbor being upset with that. And, I'll make some additional instructions to the manager. I guess if it's a windy day and a garbage truck and it flies over, I honestly don't know how to solve that one, other than to ask them if we could have permission when they see things in your yard to go over and pick it up ourselves. I mean, I could just issue the orders and it'll get done. And Tim's here to address the issue during construction. I think we can work together on it to solve it. That would irritate me too.
Sure.
Cause I walked the site before I came. I drove out. I already walked the site. I didn't see the garbage or anything, but I did see a lot of junk and pallets and all kinds of stuff behind the shop. And
Yes.
I could ask you to write a note. But you know, I don't think that's gonna go very far, but I'm not in disagreement with them. So that's what happened, then, and I believe him, then we'll address it. And I think that's fair.
So
So if I would ask that maybe we can come to a discussion point where we have a reasonable, if you saw something, I'll give him my personal cell number, if there's ever an issue, you can call him. And then there won't be an issue, because I'll get really many. And that's fair enough.
So then the other issue that we've got here is the landscaping. And honestly, your perspective on it is different than I've heard from other people doing development. Not that I want to make sure somebody is up to my standards. That in my opinion is a little different than I don't want to put money in escrow. I don't want to be responsible for it. I think what I hear you saying is they've got to do a really, really good job. Otherwise, I don't want them associated with it. Is that more or less what you're saying?
Don't have a problem with that. Like I said before, I'm the only apartment community that has an irrigation system. I'm the only apartment community that came and spent another 50 grand on trees. And if you ask my neighbor, we did plant an awful lot of trees around the site. And I plan to plant more bushes and things. It's more of an art project to me. It's a beautification project to me. And if you looked at our project over behind the water tower and the go-kart, I think most people come up and, in fact, as Tim was finishing them, asked if they could buy the apartments as condos, because they look nicer than the condos that have been built up here. So we really tried very hard. Sometimes when you deal with many, many people, and if I deal with a rubbish situation, it's been brought to my attention, I'll ask them on rubbish days to make a nice walk around and make sure nothing blew over to our neighbors. And you know, if the neighbor would like us to put up a fence or do anything else, I'll do it.
Okay, Denise?
So in the development agreement that everybody signs in our template, it states that if the landscaping at the point in time where construction is finished and landscaping would start to be planted, and the weather or the season is not conducive to that, they do have until July 1st, June 30th, I can't remember the date.
It's July 1st.
July 1st of the following year to get it done, correct?
Yeah.
So did you read that part? That you would have until July 1st of the following year to do your landscaping? That you do your landscaping, not somebody else.
So let's make sure that is understood as when that clause would come into play is if you didn't complete your landscaping. It's not that we have an inclination.
Landscaping completed at the time designated in the agreement. I'm more than willing to pony up the cash and have you hold it until I do get it finished. It's to my advantage to get the landscaping done as quickly as possible. It's one of the selling points of an apartment project. And a lot of times I do quite a bit of sodding. because it's very hard to grow grass. And, people walking over it and everything else. So we do quite a bit of sodding around our buildings, and then in large areas, but we don't have much of that left. We're a defined project. We have 4 buildings completed, all the infrastructure's in place. All it is finishing 2 additional lots or 2 additional buildings. Landscaping around those areas is very easy compared to the entrance and the elevation changes that I had on the first 4 buildings. If you drive down the driveway and see all the rocks and everything they had to bring in. So I think it's an easy landscape job. I don't think it's a problem. But the only thing I couldn't, and my attorney advised me, is if I had a third-party person come in that I didn't have control over, and that person didn't have insurance, and somebody with a skid loader ran over somebody else's foot, the liabilities have to make sure people have insurance. I have to have control of the site. We can't let third-party people in. There has to be a mechanism with the board here that you feel comfortable. And I'm saying if I'm not done, then I escrow the money. It isn't a money thing, it's gonna be a weather. Because I will just escrow the money, that's not an issue. I think that's a fair, I've never had this where someone came back and all of the developments throughout all of Wisconsin. I've never had a board or a planning commission come back and want to bring in their own people to finish something. I get that if you don't think it's finished, but I think you can deal with it with a monetary escrow and something reasonable. You don't want to be in the business. I don't want to put words in your attorney's mouth. You don't want to be in the business of bringing other people to a site. And the way it was worded was, it would be whatever. So somebody's uncle said, "Oh, it takes $1 million to finish these 2 little apartment buildings for landscaping. I'd have to pay it." There was no restriction. All I'm saying is be reasonable, make it so it makes sense for you, so that you're safeguarded, that I will finish doing a little landscaping around the building. The landscaping is 1% of the total project cost. Obviously, it's the buildings that cost all the money, so I'm going to finish the landscape.
I can put myself in, I mean, I'm trying to think about it. Obviously, I'm not in your shoes, but if I try and think about it from your perspective, I can appreciate what you're saying. At the same point, why wouldn't you, I mean, like, we're talking about something that's almost certainly not going to happen. I mean, like, I think it's extraordinarily unlikely, and I would agree with you that the projects you've completed in Sister Bay are very well done. They absolutely are. My pause is making an exception or modifying our development agreement for one individual. I just don't see this happening. I mean, Cal, I can't imagine you're not gonna get this landscaping done in this timeline, so I would hope we could be a little bit flexible, but at the same point, I understand that we don't want to just change this development agreement for every person that comes in. That's where I'm at with it. I do believe you'll get it done. So I think all of this is kind of semantics. I mean, I don't think that this is ever going to come to pass, but we always have to think about.
I think you should handle it in terms of if it's not done, that someone has to escrow the balance plus 10% or whatever was recommended to do it. I think if you went back to legal counsel, and if you ever had to enforce that against anyone, and I know you've had some developers up here that haven't been stellar. I've seen your work, so I get it. But I don't think you ever want to be in a position of putting a contractor on a site and then finishing it yourselves. I think that that's a recipe for a lot of difficulties if anyone was injured or if you didn't vet out the insurance well enough. Why take those liabilities on? Why not handle it?
How about if I read what's in?
Please do.
Okay. Page 225, starting on line 40. If, due to weather conditions or unforeseen circumstances, it will be impossible for the developer to install the required landscaping within the designated time period, the developer must request an extension from the village administrator. If an extension is requested, the developer shall provide a sufficient amount of funds to cover the related costs. In order to determine the sufficient amount of funds that will be required, the village administrator may present the previous mentioned landscaping plan to a representative of a Door County landscaping firm and request a written estimate for the required work. The developer will be provided a copy of the estimate as soon as it is available, and the required funds, the cost of the estimate plus a 10% contingency, will be held in an escrow account to be maintained by the village for the express purpose of seeing that the required landscaping is completed in as timely a fashion as possible. As soon as the required landscaping has been completed, receipts shall be provided to the developer, and any excess funds held in escrow will be refunded to the designated contact person. If the village incurs any charges as the result of requesting the previously mentioned estimate, or if the cost of the landscaping exceeds the estimated amount, the developer will be invoiced for those charges. So what it's saying is we get a bid from a landscaper. It doesn't say we're hiring the landscaper to get it done. The bid for the plan is only for the escrow amount. So the escrow amount sits in the village's account over winter. As soon as spring comes, the developer can finish the landscaping, the money can be released. It does not say specifically that we are hiring that company to do it.
Right, the only time they would go, and I don't even know if they'd have to go on the property, they might be able to use the plans that are out there. They may have to go on the property to give us the estimate. I would think they would use the plans that we supply. And like Denise said, there is a time frame. So the code says if you can't get something done by a certain date in winter, you can ask for a time extension to, I believe it is July 1st, which for many people, depending when you're doing your project, it actually gets you 2.5 years to actually complete that landscaping, depending how it's structured. So nobody would be going on your property, Ms. Reagan. It would just be, you don't get it done, we're gonna ask you, we're gonna get an estimate and ask you to put that money in escrow so the work does get done. Just like you said you would do, right?
So the implication of wording is that the refund will be made after your contract to get the work. When you read the implication of that word, maybe we can clarify that wording a little bit better with the legal counsel, so they don't have to argue. If it's a function of, we got late in the season, couldn't get something done, we'll work with that. And I think, what do I have, 24 months total to finish the project from when we pull permits, is that the goal?
Yes.
Why can't you use the estimate from Cal's landscaping rather than bringing in someone from Door County and getting another estimate, knowing that they're not even gonna get the job? Why couldn't you just use the estimate that we would have from the landscaper that's gonna do the work? Use that.
Because I think if we get to that point, Tim, there's already a problem.
No, like you said, if it came to winter. I thought you had an estimate. You don't.
So I can say this has been in here for quite a while. I would think the concern on that would be, I'm not saying it would be you, but with some developers, perhaps they would go with a low-cost landscaper that those funds really would not cover the true cost of doing the landscape.
It'll be the exact bid of the bathroom landscape. It'll be the true cost. We get prices on landscaping after the landscaping plan is drawn in writing, and they'll stick to that price.
Yeah, I mean,
Mind if we shared that landscaping bid with you? Would that help alleviate things from the get-go?
It's,
Is it a
This is
complete
not-
act of trust like someone like myself? Is that the?
no, and I kind of took a little
It's
offense
done all this.
earlier about being contentious. This applies to everybody in the village. Everybody. Paula that was sitting here tonight, the guy who built the Door Hotel, the condos that are up where the old schoolhouse was, everybody has signed this development agreement. The village is trying to protect itself. We agreed that there were all kinds of changes that you and your attorney suggested, and I would say we probably made the 80% of them. There were a couple we didn't. So we agreed with all those changes, but we changed the template for everybody. Everybody. This apply, we do not change our templates individually. We try to play a fair game for everybody who wants to develop in the village. Treat everybody the same. They all sign the same document. Some of the site specifications or conditions, if it's a conditional use permit, yes, that will be different, but that's part of the process. Just like the village is going to be signing a contract later tonight from WPS to have some road work done. We can't say to WPS, I don't really like your wording. I don't like what that implies. We can't change their contract. We sign it. And it has nothing to do with not trusting anybody. We're just trying to play a fair game and treat everybody the same.
Can you clarify the inference that's made by bringing the third-party landscape contractor onto our job site, such that that's not the intent, but it's simply that if you want to get another bid because the work wasn't done in 2 years, I'm not even thinking that's possible, but after COVID and chain of supply issues, sometimes things change that one can't depend upon. And I think we all can understand that after COVID. I did have delays for up to 4 months for $1 part in my electrical pan. I was finished with the buildings. I couldn't put anyone in because I couldn't get occupancy because I couldn't even canalize the $1 part. It was on backlog. So I try to anticipate these things so that when I sign something, most people just sign them without having this discussion. And that's the person you don't want to have because they don't care. I care if I sign, I'm going to perform.
We've had all of the other developers have attorneys review the document.
So if we can clarify that we're not bringing the third party person in, but you're simply using it as, we'll give you all the documents and I'll have a bid left or a job left. Let's say it's 30 grand to finish it. And if you want to choose that number, then you can have your own other person come up with something. And I ask for it and then we finish it and we're all done. I don't have a problem with that. I can't have the inference of having someone come onto my site that I don't control.
I think what Denise read, I learned from listening to Denise tonight that the inference isn't there that they'll be on your site. The inference is very clear that it's just to get an estimate. I mean, it's pretty clear in there. It sounds like from when Denise read it. So it seems like that language you're looking for is already there.
Well, let's clarify that from.
Like, yeah. Great.
You know, I don't think that I have a problem if we can clarify that. Reasonable head should prevail on something like this. And looking we read it, we read it, the inference is there. And because of the inference being there, I have to state categorically, I can't have, nor would you wouldn't want to be on the other end of that, putting someone in. I'm just saying there's so many complications. We're creating a lot of issues that really haven't existed with me.
We're not looking at you when we rewrote this. I mean, if everybody was like you, we wouldn't have had to go through and write this document like we did. We've done this based on our other experiences that haven't been so good. I mean, I guess what I'm hearing though is we can agree on what the intent is. There's just some massaging of words.
And it has,
Yes.
we have yet to implement it, correct?
Right, we've only had one that I'm aware of that did not do their landscaping, and it went on for like 2 extra years. And then finally, we actually started litigation against them to enforce the landscape.
I get it. If we can massage the words so that I don't feel the inference is there, then I can live with it. How does that
I
sound?
feel like it's fairly clear. It says, in order to determine the sufficient amount of funds that will be required, the village administrator may present the previous mentioned landscaping plan to a representative of a Door County landscaping firm and request a written estimate. So it's just presenting the plan to somebody else. They look at it and give an estimate. There's nothing about anybody walking anywhere on your property.
Read the following. Keep reading.
The developer will be provided a copy of the estimate. Money will be held in escrow. As soon as the landscaping has been completed, receipts shall be provided to the developer and any excess funds will be refunded to the designated contractor.
Leave
If
gray
the
area
developer
as to who's doing
themselves
the complete-
don't finish the landscaping.
That's all I
That-
understand from this too.
That is the worst case scenario. So if it goes until July 1st of the following year, if it's still not completed by then, and there hasn't been, for whatever reason, an additional extension requested, that applies.
I feel like this is pretty clear and makes sense. And everybody else has signed it, who's developed in the village, correct? Yes.
I'm just gonna ask that. um, Okay. Okay, there is, it goes on a little bit more, it's my turn to watch and it's giving me all of the points here. There's a sentence that says, as soon as the required landscaping has been completed, reach shall be provided to the developer. That implies that you are hiring somebody. It doesn't say explicitly. It says the receipts will be delivered to the developer. Well, that means somebody else is doing the work other than me. If receipts are delivered to me. And it implies that they're doing the work. That's all he's saying. I think that your legal counsel could clarify that in a very simple sentence or two.
I
That's all I'm
agree
asking.
that receipts shall be provided to the developer as.
Yeah, I agree.
So
That's the
when
way it
receipts are
sounds.
being supplied to someone, that means y'all did the work. I don't supply the receipts to myself. So I just need a clarification on that. If we get a clarification on that, that'd be great. That's all we're asking. So the intent is the same. And I'm just gonna say right in front of everybody right here, Tim, just sod the place. When we get to that point, sod. Now, if I can't get sod, because we can get it from Illinois if we have to. But if I can't get sod, then it's really late in the season. I'm not gonna try to grow grass on apartment sites much anymore. It's too hard because the kids and the people, they just tromp all over it. So let's just sod it and then we'll be done. If we can, depending upon the climate. And if we get the delay, because of weather, whatever it is, then we sod it in the first part of June and then we meet the July date. How's that sound? Tim's all good with it. I'll do that.
Okay, so we just want. What we're saying here is that we want some clarity on that receipts portion of it, to remove the ambiguity.
That's all I'm asking.
I think we have consensus on there, and if we're gonna do that, we should do that on the
All,
template.
Correct.
yeah, your template is fine.
If the, as
Every
soon as the
template-
required landscaping has been completed by the developer or the village's hired something to that effect. I think it has to be very clear by the, something about by the developer, it's no issue, the money is returned.
Okay.
Receipts only apply if they still didn't get to it, now it's July 2nd, and if it's July 2nd, we have a problem with the developer and with the project that this had to be implemented.
He has a bigger problem because he can't occupy the building until the landscaping is done.
There you go.
No, that's not true. The landscaping does not have to be done to occupy the building. What if it hits December 30th? And the building's done, they can occupy the building.
That's with the building inspector, but not through zoning. The development agreement does say and has always said it has to be done before they can occupy the building. Because there's the building inspector's certificate of occupancy, and then there's the zoning certificate of compliance.
Well, that hasn't been done in the past.
Yeah, we looked at that about a year ago and made sure we started enforcing them.
So you're saying if we get this building done January 1st. And we did, January 1st, we can't buy sod or shrubs or anything. That building's gotta stay empty till June.
They ask for the additional time.
My understanding, like, I'm building 8 buildings currently for that workforce housing that we just had the discussion about, that's needed in Door County. I'm building 8 buildings in Sturgeon Bay. Now, that's obviously rotating every 60 to 90 days. I'm completing another building until the project's done from May. So what you're saying is, if I complete a building, we're only doing 2, but let's say I complete a building in October, November of next year. If I complete it then, because I don't have it landscaped, I won't get occupancy, and we're gonna leave that building empty till the following June, and you're asking us to come and build workforce housing in your community?
That's the way the code is written.
That's what you're saying?
Yeah, the code is written that you need a certificate of compliance prior to occupancy.
I can say that you won't get any workforce housing or any developers.
I know
Because I can't, we gotta work with the weather.
Yeah, that's the way the county code is written as well. So
Can they apply for an extension?
they can apply for extension.
And then occupy
And then
that.
they can.
Oh, or they can, or what we do a lot of times, if somebody doesn't have time to get the asphalt, like they can't get a contractor in, they provide proof that they have contracted for it, and then we let them move in based on a good faith thing that they've demonstrated, they've made all attempts, they weren't able, we let them move forward with it, and it's a written agreement. I think at this point, so for the sake of time, I think we either have to move forward on this or send it back to the plan commission, because we spent quite a bit of time on it, you guys.
I guess as much, I've been on planning commission for a very long time. And I respect what planning commission does, and it's a lot of it. At the same point, we got 24 housing units, or is it, no, 12? No, yeah, 24 units. Looking us right in the eye. We need those housing units. I don't want to devalue what plan commission does, because I've been a part of it for so long, but at the same point, we're talking about something that isn't going to happen. Keeping us from getting this done. I don't believe, Cal, that you're not gonna get that landscaping done well before any deadline. So what we're talking about is for other people that,
But we read everything, and if I sign it.
I understand that.
If you don't, the people that are gonna flim flam it will sign it all without, they don't, my attorney reads it all. He's well known, and so we're gonna finish it properly, just like you said. But let's remove the ambiguity, but another point was brought up that just kind of frightens me a little bit. Is that I've never had it in any community, in all of the 5,000 apartments we built in Wisconsin. I've never had anyone tell me that if I finish in the winter time and I don't have the landscaping finished, it'll all be graded and the sidewalks will be in and all of that, but you can't put hot down in, in the middle of Thanksgiving. But I've never had anyone say that I might not have occupancy. That's just bring a big red flag to me tonight.
So,
I mean, I have to get a clarification now with legal on that, because if they're not gonna give me occupancy, I have to sit empty for 8 months. Yeah, you all never should talk about workforce now, because you just killed everybody who walked in the door. And if you just take a step back on that, where's the reasonable man and all, so the reasonable woman, or the reasonable person?
Yes, we need.
Yeah,
to-
all.
yeah,
I'm for moving on. We have a really agenda.
Still on.
Send it
okay, so
somewhere.
what, you guys wanna push this back to plan then? Or do
I
we-
guess so. I mean, we're not getting anywhere right now. It seems like.
Okay. All right, then I guess we'll refer A and B back to plan commission
And the template.
in the template.
So
We're gonna
because
have
you
it.
gave me a tentative plan commission agenda, we can still add it.
I can add it to that.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Cal. Good to do that. On to C, the electrical easement for Middle Road West.
What page might that be on?
257.
Thank you.
That is just easement we need to put the utilities underground alongside of the yacht club and the road.
Yeah.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Roscoe, second by Berto. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Just a point of clarification, Dan, we're not involved in this. We don't have to sign it, correct?
It was just updated to add Sister Bay because we're in the process of switching so that we're both on there right now.
All right, the annexation and rezoning of Woodcrest and County Road ZZ. I'll make a motion that we just refer back to the planning commission for annexing and rezoning of that parcel.
Second.
Motion by Bell, second by Roscoe. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Easement Canterbury extension.
So as the staff report says, this property has become available for sale. It's $9,995,000. I don't think we have that.
$9 million?
$9,995,000. We don't really have the money to buy that, so we would like to get an easement. We'd like them to donate the easement if possible.
John?
The realtor, I'm sorry, yes, the real estate agent said we could do an offer to purchase where we're asking to purchase an easement at no cost, so there would no cost to us. I can't do that without the village's permission, so I would need the village's
Hey, guys.
permission to make that offer.
If you guys are gonna keep the conversation, can you take it out in the hallway? Steve?
Hey, fellas,
Excuse me? Steve? If you guys are gonna keep that conversation, can you take it out in the hallway for us? Thank you.
So, it would be in the form of an offer to purchase. There'd be no cost, to try and secure that easement. Of course, if we get an easement, then we'd want to develop a road. The seller may say, no, I'm not interested. Maybe we could work with a buyer on that. But to start that process, I would need the board's approval to pursue an easement.
So second.
Motion Post, second by Roscoe. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Just for the record, if there was an acceptance on that, we would then work with Parks, Property and Streets to figure out the location of the road.
Okay, architectural review. of-
Well, before there, on the official roadmap though, there is a road that goes through there.
There's roads that go through that property. They're in varying locations. So we'd want to look at that. Also, as part of our smart growth process right now, we have to update that map. So it's a good time to look at this anyway and say, where should the roads realistically be going up there? Architectural review. So the Village Hall Planning Task Force contracted with Isaacson Architects to give them drawing on how the Village Hall could be renovated. And the architect came up with the drawings that you have before there. He did tell us that he is also able to do the structural drawings for us within budget with the money that they have left, which is really great. But before he proceeds with all that, and before we before we put it out for an RFP for the HVAC, the plumbing, the electrical, we don't wanna go, they don't wanna go further, spend dollars unless they know this is something the village board will support. So as you can see, it is an addition off the water side of the building. That addition contains restroom and showers. It has a deck above it. It is accessible from the main stage area. There's windows added, so when you're on stage, you can actually outsee, you can actually take advantage of the water, the view, and see the water. And there would be a door that would lead out to that deck. There's also an addition where they're tearing off the two small additions on the south side of the building. And instead they're putting in an actual lobby with functioning elevator, restrooms.
What's this bar here?
So, a lot of the entertainment venues would have a bar where you can get drinks, so they
Like
put
an
that,
actual like bar.
yeah. The proposal is stone to continue to match the rest of the building. Do you have anything else to add to that?
Not really, it was, no.
I was just confused where it says open to lobby next to the bar. Is that the elevator? Or how do you get into that? I don't, what is that area right there?
Open to lobby.
Is that
Yes, that's the
downstairs?
It's downstairs.
I'm not sure what that is. It's
That's at ground, that's at ground level.
Oh, okay. Even though it says hall level, it's not really. Hall level?
Oh, wait, no, no, hall level plan, I'm sorry. At grade basement.
Which part were you looking at?
I'm just looking at here, like, what's that square there and how do you
Oh,
access it?
it says open to lobby, so what it is, there are, let me look at the elevation view here. So if you look at the east elevation view, you'll see that addition has doors. So you'd go through those doors and you're in a lobby. So it says open to lobby, so you're standing in a lobby with, 2-story or 2 levels of glass at that point.
And what is that? What is this? What is this right here, this big square?
That's the elevator. That's
That is the elevator.
You're looking at the elevator.
I like it.
I mostly like it.
I think the addition towards the water.
It-
Stage.
Here are my questions. I personally don't feel that the stage should remain, because then you're also eating up a huge amount of floor space with the ramp that goes to the stage. If there was going to be, you know, like the Lions Club used to, at Fall Festival, used to put on shows there many years ago. And so if you were gonna have something of that nature, you can bring in risers and steps up to those risers, depending upon how high you might want to go. Because I don't think we'd ever go as high as what that stage currently is, so I kind of feel like that's a waste a big waste of space.
I think it also would make those windows more approachable and you'd be pulled over to that corner more than having that stage in your way.
Is there, but I've been trying to,
There was,
with having the stage there, because you probably saw bigger plans or whatever. If the stage wasn't there, would it impact anything with the windows that are back there, Don?
impact that.
Or are the windows, stage?
No, you'd have to have a way to get, we were gonna try to make that outside deck accessible from that stage
Okay,
level, because it has to be there.
okay,
So we would have to have another means to get out to that level from the inside, if somebody had an event where they wanted to go inside the
Sure.
outside. So you'd still need some sort of a ramp for people that have needs to use a ramp. So either way, I think we do have to have some sort of a ramp configuration in there.
okay.
I don't know, the committee seemed to really, think that the stage was part of the history of the building,
It is.
you know?
Well, and I don't disagree. I
I
mean,
think that's sort of why they're saying, will it be used, is it used much now?
I was just thinking of that, because I've been to events at, the Village Hall in the past 2-3 years with
Yeah.
the Pride event and, for, more private events or whatever. And the stage is not used.
right,
Even with like the Pride event, they put performances on, but they don't use the stage. It's all floor level.
so that's a lot of space. Well,
Yeah, and I
okay,
see
so if we
that.
still have to have the ramp, if you want access out to that deck out the back.
I would
I'm
think so,
wondering,
stairways
is there-
and a ramp, probably, right? You'd have to have some way to get up to have that accessible out there.
Right, we do have a lot of people in the village that do want the stage to stay. Because of its historical significance.
But
I
if it's
understand,
not
yeah.
used and you could gain all that square
Right.
footage, and if you needed a stage. And maybe there's something we could do with those floorboards and we could make risers out of them, so we could repurpose
Preserve, yeah.
it.
I understand the significance of the stage, but if we want this to be a place that is used up more and more effectively
Efficiently,
and more, yes, efficiently, thank you. I would not be opposed to getting rid of the stage and, like you said, maybe repurposing part of it to build risers or whatever, or even, I don't know, the ramp or whatever we need to get out to the deck. This is just based on experience attending events every year there, the stage is not used. So,
Yeah, I guess.
and like, as someone, I rent out village facilities throughout the year for personal events. And I can see, like, if I were ever to rent the village hall, I wouldn't see why, a need for the stage, you know what I mean?
If you look at any of the other historic village halls in the county, they all have kept their stage.
They do have the stage. I go to a lot of events at the Gibraltar Village Hall as well.
Gibraltar,
And
Village
the
Harbor.
stage is really never used either.
Well, look, it depends, we talk about the future use of the hall. I don't know if there's gonna be a group that decides to start putting on plays again one day. Who knows, it could be a little playhouse for the town.
Yeah.
And the village, once it starts, a lot of artistic people up here and, I don't know that was ever on the list of things people wanted to use it for. It was gonna be used for all kinds of things. Once it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing. And I don't know how much. Yeah, I quite frankly, I didn't even think about having the stage removed.
I was just
So-
thinking, if you do have new windows there, maybe some people want to be. The patio is not enclosed, correct?
No, it's
So
outside.
maybe some people want to be, maybe it's a windy day and you want to be up on the stage. Looking through the windows, or even Village Hall uses their stage fairly frequently, like Santa's there. When I was a kid, we did plays there. They fully do their village meetings there. And then how is this space going to differ from our community center? Maybe the stage is one thing that does set it apart from the community center when we build that. I don't know.
The warming house slash.
Warming House Community Center, ice rink, sports complex.
Oh. Well, it's not on the water.
Yeah. So
I just think that but it also set the stage also for most of and granted, there hasn't been a lot of rentals of it. But I would say people used to have to pick up the key from me when they rented the village hall. That was my job 100 years ago, for a very long time. And the majority of what people rented it for then and now was not to use the stage. So I think if the stage was, and I'm not saying that every once in a while somebody will use it, but it separates that area and the view from the whole rest of the main floor. And that's why I think if there's something that we could do where the whole space can be utilized, and if on occasion there is to be a play, a performance, whatever it is that you want to call that would require that just like all kinds of places, you bring out risers and you address the issue and utilize it that way. I'm not gonna get hung up on that. I'm gonna move on.
So something I'm thinking about is this. There's going to be some change at the village hall. It's not gonna stay exactly how it is. That's not feasible. Instead of looking at removing the stage, maybe we can re-envision how the stage is being used. And I think some of that is people aren't drawn to that corner because it's just a dark corner.
Yeah.
So maybe having those windows there, and maybe we can do some temporary cosmetic things to make people more drawn to that area, yet leaving the stage there, so if somebody wants to use it, you can certainly go back to how it was. You know, leaving the structure there.
What if it's not considered a stage at all? It's considered another tier.
That, we could do that while preserving the historical staginess of it.
You know,
Yeah. I mean, I'm not like, I'm
spruce it
so
up
fine
with
with the stage.
Table,
stage or
chairs and
not.
couches up there. I don't know. No, we're.
I'm glad that we're preserving the village hall and doing something to.
Well, I don't know that we need to make the decision though on a stage tonight or not.
Right, that's why I was just
Yeah,
gonna move
it's
on. I'm just giving.
literally getting this, look, we've got this plan, which was somewhat, a compromise of a lot of things that
Yeah, I
were
like.
brought
that.
up down to, you know, it went big and then it kind of got small again.
That's a great job.
Yeah.
It just worked. It's a little more than just cosmetics, which
Right.
we
And
were.
that's, I think,
Yeah.
I think that while we're preserving the village hall, we're also adding something else to it to make it more attractive, maybe to people that are not, you know, there's people here that really, the village hall doesn't mean much to them because they're newer to the county. So, you know, they don't have that attachment to the village hall. But if we can make it a little more attractive for that kind of people.
That outside seating is gonna be amazing.
Yeah,
I think it'd be a nice place to relax.
I'm just glad we're preserving it.
What else you got?
I was curious in your conversations, why the bathrooms on the back,
Mhm.
why they didn't make them larger. I mean, this one marina bathroom with one shower seems really awful small for the needs of
Yeah.
what's down on J Dock and.
There were more, but we still haven't talked about that at the Marina Committee to find out how those, because of the new building, they're building with the new showers and, family.
Right.
So we weren't initially considering that as part of, let's help the marina to give showers for the people that have boats. So there were more, some came out, there was one left, I don't remember
Yeah, there's actually, I think, 3 showers in there.
Where? I
There-
see
I think-
one.
I think it was.
I see 2, and then I see.
But it's terms of the actual.
Yeah, I think there's 2.
And then.
between-
Because it's toilet,
I
toilet,
think there's 2.
oh, shower, handicap, two. Sorry, I could barely read that. Thank you. Okay, two. I did have a quick conversation with our marina manager and I know Marina hasn't looked at it yet, but he said he measured it off when he was doing something else, and it's a 1/4 mile to walk from J-Dock to the bathrooms. Almost 1,300 square feet. So I think I'll wait to hear from you guys, but my first take was we should take up the whole width of the back of the village hall to provide as many bathrooms as possible. This is much more where people, not just for the marina, but just bathrooms in general, because that's where more people are congregating.
Yeah.
And then don't have to cross the driveway, you know, to get to the other bathrooms.
And then it will alleviate a little bit of the issue we come across with the bathrooms that we're closing. They'll be able, these will be outdoor access,
Yes,
so then these could be used as well for any like
Yeah,
November,
for beach.
December
park.
events.
Yeah.
Like they opened them up this year during those events, this will help a little more with that.
So that was, did he go into detail on how tall the crawl space is?
No.
Okay.
Anyways, really nice. Thank you, John.
So that was,
Yeah,
Pretty-
more bathrooms for sure. I think that's a good idea. And
I mean, the beach isn't
marina.
going to get less people
No.
down there.
no, and we have, I mean, now you have from the real need, right now we have, it looks like we're addressing, you have the ones next to the wild tomato right on the corner, right?
Yeah.
And you have these, and you have the marina,
Mhm.
which I think that'll be accessible to everybody.
But those will be open year round.
Yeah,
Mhm.
So, we've got enough.
I don't really know what we're.
Direction on there, Mel, I think we want to just,
Yeah, so we can take these, some additional ideas. So we weren't gonna meet again until this, I wasn't gonna even meet again at the committee. We said we were gonna meet again because we were gonna have him,
The next step would have been to get the structural drawing,
Yeah.
so, I mean,
so we.
So the
need to
marina
add-
committee needs to weigh in.
Yeah, I guess to just really on the bathrooms.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Yeah.
That would be March meeting.
So,
The village hall is a meeting again.
so restrooms across the back is really the big one.
Yeah.
Larger area, full width of the back is really, and the stage is something that we're not decided on.
I don't know what's under it, you know. It's,
I can say this, but I think the group was very adamant about keeping the historic character once you were inside the building. They didn't want to touch the east face. And then they want to keep the stone, they want to keep the roof line, and then once you were inside the building, the stage, that was really important to the group, so.
But it all comes back to parks.
It does, and I just want to know, I just don't want to burn up the money having structural drawings.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I wouldn't do it yet.
Right, I will let Henry
So
know
we'll
that,
put this on
Parks agenda.
the parks agenda
And the
and the
marina.
marina committee agenda.
All right,
okay, I need 5 minutes, everybody else is taking a break, I need 5
Okay.
minutes here.
well, we'll go ahead and continue then.
yeah,
7 then.
Heidi, why did the logos not print out on some of that?
Because they're in your header, and for whatever reason on your computer, when the logo is in the header, it won't print. and I take the time to fix them all.
We'll have to redo the template. Because they used it.
Is it because of the margins?
No, if for some odd reason, we all have unique PDF programs on our individual computers and nothing is compatible. So
Oh,
just makes life really interesting in the village office.
Telecommunications ordinance, Janelle typed it, she sent it to me, I'm like, what, nothing lines up, so she redoes it. Land division ordinance, that real big chapter 54, that's what happened, why Heidi ended up retyping it, they're not compatible when you work between each other,
and how do we address that?
a lot of work.
No,
For the-
how do we
waiting for the-
really address it?
Waiting for the day where we can buy all new systems and start over.
Or we can buy a group license for Adobe, or we can buy a group license for all of this stuff,
And
and
everybody
individual
get-
licenses for
And
everything.
everybody have the same word programs and
Yeah.
same style of computers.
And why can't we do that?
We're trying to save the village money and save it for an
How
admin building.
expensive is that, Tasha?
To redo all. the
Tens of
computers, all-
thousands of dollars. Just for the software, just for the
No,
licenses?
not just for the licenses, but I mean, but at this point, my computer fails every day, pretty much, it goes blue. So I mean, we're getting to the point where those are gonna be in our CIP plan and they're not gonna be 5 years out, they're gonna be, we can't wait.
Yes.
We were trying to wait for the admin building and we're running out of time waiting.
Yeah, I often can't open PDFs. Now this week I can't open, emails and text messages.
Yeah.
It's just,
How much
it's
each
just
save
goofy.
is the cost?
The last time we went through an IT upgrade where everybody got new computers for the entire village staff. I think we were at 65,000, new PCs, new server, new all of that kind of stuff.
With some of that support, the administration of STRs and.
That's all budgeted for, so I mean, we are
It's better.
we are spending that money. I mean, we've already contracted for software for that, so we're getting there. We're taking.
Can you use some of that though for that? To get that. Because we're not. Yeah.
Maybe.
All right. File G,
So-
liquor license surrender. Heidi?
Yep, I was gonna say trustee Orozco is going to recuse herself for the next two items. Skipstone Coffee Roasters, located at 10678 North Bay Shore Drive, has a offer for purchase on it. And in order for the new buyer to get licensing for beer and wine, the current owner has to surrender his. So this is a conditional surrender request based on the sale of that property.
Make a motion. that we
Yeah.
accept.
So.
Motion by Bill, second by Cox. All those in favor?
The second request then is from the purchaser. The closing date is scheduled for sometime this month. We don't have an exact date yet. But once staff verifies that the property has closed and a new beer and wine license couldn't be issued. The application is in the packet. It has been completed. The fees have been paid. The fire inspection is not necessary because it has already been done. So we're just waiting on a closing date.
Question on the page 279, part F. Have you lived in any state other than Wisconsin as an adult? If yes, please list them in the space below. And Lily wrote no. And then how long have you lived continuously in Wisconsin prior to the date of application was left blank?
So Lily, do you want to answer that question?
Yeah. Okay, I'm 20 years. I've lived in Wisconsin for 20 years.
So that was an oversight on my part because the liquor forms have changed and I haven't studied them all in depth yet. And these new forms will not be the ones being used going forward because the state has changed them yet again and hasn't released them to us yet. So
Okay.
you might not even be getting
okay.
renewal forms.
So I have, so you said 20 years, but.
Oh, continuous 8, sorry, continuous 8.
Okay, because on the next page you wrote 8.
Yeah.
Okay,
So Lily, you just want to correct that on the application?
Yeah.
And I have it here, so
and so before Wisconsin, you were in Mexico? Okay.
Yeah.
So nowhere else, okay. Thank you. So moved.
Second motion by Roberto, second by Cox, all those in favor?
I,
Opposed, motion carries. Okay. I'll come back, Lily. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, committee discussion, proposed workforce housing committee. So this came up at plan. I actually think that workforce housing is probably too narrow, in my opinion, that from what we were discussing. I think it's just a housing committee
yes.
with a lot of different things that they would likely touch. Um, I think
Really, I was thinking very narrow things they would touch.
Well, we're gonna task them with a lot of different things, but
Okay.
I mean, I think that there's a couple questions that I have. I mean, like, one question that I have is, what is the village doing getting in its own way? Because there's very real ways we are, and having somebody else come and look at it and give us some insight into that. And maybe we don't want to make changes. We say, nope, those are really good reasons we want to do that, but that's some of the things that I have thought about. I think I've got about 5 or 6 people that have got interest in there. Miles, Luis, Chad,
I think,
Ryan Shout. I mean, I'm not ready to appoint yet. I'm just
Right.
saying, we've got some
let
people.
me throw some names out.
Yeah.
I think that we need to talk to people who have done this, who know what they're doing, the contacts that they have, the resources that they have. I would really like us to talk to Marissa Downs to see if she would be interested. I think, is it Jeff Lutsky,
Jeff Lucy.
in Sturgeon Bay? Has he not been building?
Bailey's.
He's done from Bailey's. He's got shot down in from and.
I think I mean, we need to know people who have done it, how to do it, worked in different communities, what models they're using, what models do they, I mean, the model is really, to me, the biggest thing.
Mhm.
And then there was,
There's a guy from the UW system that came up and talked to Wiltsey too, that,
oh, I remember reading them, I can't remember.
yeah, Chad and Miles would know off the top of their head. He was GB.
So is there anybody else that's done housing projects that we could tap into?
I ran a housing program.
You're excluded.
You really want
I don't.
to?
I also think that Miles probably has some folks that he would
Recommend.
recommend.
I mean, what Miles is just a wealth of information.
And I did get Miles to agree to be part
Chair.
of that. I don't know if he's gonna chair.
Okay,
I might just force that upon him, not tell him until later. Hope he's not watching now.
okay.
How about,
I-
I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
They had, I know we had mentioned him, or he had shown interest when we were talking about the parking committee, but Burris. Burris.
I have not heard from Dick. I will take in whatever capacity I can get him in. He's got a lot of institutional knowledge about Sister Bay, so,
Yeah,
I might be more excited to have him on parking, but I have not
Yes.
actually heard from him than
Yes.
this. Dick is a very valuable resource, and I just want to make sure we
We
use
use
him
them.
the best way we can.
So,
What
it,
about lenders?
pardon?
What about lenders?
Okay, I'm getting to that. So I'm gonna disagree with Julie. That staff recommends that some of the people have mortgage experience, a builder. And I don't think, I think we can tap into them and invite people that have that knowledge at some point in time. But to do the research, recommend a model, find maybe what's wrong, if anything, with our zoning that would preclude something. I know Stan Tech, based on the housing study, presented a variety of different sizes of homes, but mostly all ownership. And I think we can use them at the point where we've made all the other decisions
Marshall.
or close to those decisions and then bring them in, but for them to and, you know, debate with me, Julie, on why you think they should be there the whole time from the beginning, because I see that as a waste of their time. And I'm very leery about builders being on a committee.
Could I understand about individual builders, but I think this has a better chance to succeed. And I was listening to the back and forth with the builder that was here. Think of public sector trying to solve this on their own. You're already seeing why it continues to stumble. I think you need the private sector to come and help and have a nice collaborative effort, because you just can't solve all those problems from the government saying, we see these problems, we're gonna do this, because then another bunch of stuff opens up and I get the spaghetti bowl and it just went everywhere. You have to have people with the private experience that have developed to work collaboratively with you, not because they're doing it just for profit. There's a whole economy that'll just happen. It's a free market economy, and you can't control and trap by doing this just from this.
Right, and that's why I thought
But it
Marissa
seems like that's what we're
Downs,
trying to, but it seems like that's what we've tried so hard to do, and everybody was expressing, we've always, what can we do? And reach out to industry.
But I think that we should probably
Somehow,
rephrase
we're
it.
part of industry, but
What can we facilitate is a much better way to look at it, because government doesn't do that much. Government facilitates a
Get in the way.
tremendous amount. That's what we do.
Maybe
Yes,
there's like a
we-
retired lender, a retired person who's been, who's just in the community and wants to help out, a
Yeah.
retired builder. Maybe it doesn't have to be somebody who is currently building or lending. It could be, we have so many retirees in our community who might want to be involved. Yeah.
Let's see what we can find out there. I mean, understanding that's what we're looking for. I'll sit down with Miles and see what we can come up with. I'll talk to Marissa. I may talk to Cal again. I mean, I don't, if he's actively working on a project, I'm a little less inclined to want to engage with him, but at the same point, does have a different perspective.
yeah, and the last year, there was a 2019 study, but the last year of data was 17. 7 years ago, the whole world's changed in 7 years. Economies continue to thrive. COVID happened, all this shit, nothing's the same as it was in 17. So it's a start. The methodology, maybe how they collect that information is a start, but I would just start over.
Well,
There's a platform 7 years ago. I mean, my goodness, it's a lot has changed.
I mean, that's what we're actively working on.
Yeah,
And we will see that in the next month or two. I mean, like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Miles mentioned they have updated numbers.
And we just
Based
paid
on the
$50,000 for updated numbers
Yeah,
that are a month. old.
yeah, that's right.
Let's
Those
not
are
forget
numbers. Those
that.
are fairly recent numbers.
So
Whether you believe them or not, they're data pulled from,
we can
public
still work
sector.
with those too.
yeah.
So going back to, when Miles was making a really good point about 100 to 150 residents between Scand and Hearthside, et cetera, et cetera. And the poverty data, the household income, how do we extrapolate those numbers so we can really fine tune? Who can do that? How do we do that?
So I had asked Sydney, our land use planner, at the land use planning session, if she could extrapolate that for us. And she said, I'm thinking how we're gonna do that, but I think I can do that.
Okay, so she's mulling it over and working on
Yeah, we
it.
talked about that on the 27th, so she knows she has to figure that out to see, this is what the data says, but then this is what the data says if you take out. ski.
Okay.
So.
And then, Julie's last suggestion. I don't think you can be a committee member and take minutes and be productive. I mean, we did that when I first got on the board, and it's hard, and not 100% engaged.
Well, we can always record it too, and then it can be done during business hours as well, and that's.
Yeah, we have had some meetings where staff isn't there taking the minutes and they get.
I mean, if it's just a motion here or there, but I think when we're talking and we want to, you know, read what, you know, the conversation was and the direction and.
Cause I think the first Wiltsey group. And that's what concerns me with kind of just repeating members, you know, are we just repeating what we've done, but that's, you said, you know, debate with you about why we need different people on there and that. But that group, what they did was they recorded their meetings.
Okay.
And then, I believe somebody typed them up after. My only concern with that is, you know, I think about staff. We have a lot of committees, you guys. You have a lot of committees. And one employee alone in the month of January, just doing meetings, had 29 hours of overtime. That's a lot of overtime we're paying people. So, you know, I just watched that part of it and saying, is there a better way to do that? Can they meet during the day? That'd be great if they could. Don't always happen. Like Nate said, maybe we record them and they type them later or something.
I think that would be my suggestion on there, because I do understand what you're saying, you can't effectively be a committee member, engage and keep notes on it.
That makes sense.
And I think that it does take a little bit longer to transcribe on there. And the other thing is we could also send it to a transcription service and then have somebody, you know, work on that, because that still could save time. We can see how that goes. Because you could just upload the digital file, they'll pull that there, and then you have somebody
Correct that.
correct it after that. So I absolutely do understand and agree with your point that we shouldn't have asked staff for the overtime for that, but also for quality of life for staff to have to put these, that's a consideration as well.
Well, and another solution to that, as we move on for committee appointments, is that maybe we need to refocus and narrow down our scope of agenda items.
Were you in my head?
What?
Were you in my head? A 2-page agenda?
That's all.
These are 8.5 by 11s. We had 11 by 14s. They were 1 page. This could have been 1 page on it, but
But come on, guys,
I wanted to hang out with you
There's a
late
lot
to
to
the
do,
night.
there's a lot to do, but it's also the magic of we did really well on the first section. When
I've only
everybody
got-
just made motions and, you know, if we all read the stuff, right, if we're all comfortable.
Yep.
with it, then it's okay. It doesn't matter. Long as it's
Okay.
some of the other comments.
So with this closing committee, what we do is we bring forward a resolution at the next meeting. So what I understand is we're not gonna define it saying certain types of people like contractor, banker. We're not gonna do any of that. We're just gonna say we wanna create a housing committee. Not a task force, and just leave it that, like a 1 sentence.
Well, did we already
Resolution?
change
No, we'll have to amend the bylaws after we.
okay, but we do have to. What did we create where we said that there were gonna be X amount of people between such and such and such
There
and
was
such?
parking,
Parking.
holiday lighting.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So would we have to do that for this also?
Yep.
So you and Nate can talk about that and come up with a recommendation?
Yeah, I should have a feel for how many we're gonna
Okay.
have. I think I can tell you that this not being a solidly formed committee, there's a lot more people interested. than on either of the other two. I've got a lot longer list on this than.
Good.
So,
Excellent.
okay. Committee appointments.
We're right.
So I don't want Dawn on parking. I don't want to put anybody on parking or holiday lights yet. I don't have a full enough list of people to fill. I don't want to try and put one person on there on the committee. I'd like to appoint at least a critical mass.
Do you know that I'm interested in holiday lighting?
I did pick that up today.
Okay. I wasn't sure.
So you have to go recruiting now because it was in the paper a few times and you've been asking.
There's a couple people that I've reached out that I haven't talked to. There's a few people I have reached out to that, and there's a couple, I mean, like,
I mean, I'm not.
I was hoping
looking forward to-
that Dick Burris would come out there, but I'm probably gonna have to reach out to him and have a conversation, so, there's that.
Yep.
The one appointment that I do have for this month, and I have tried to get in touch with Marge over the last month, because I wanted to have a conversation with her before I made another appointment to library. Because I want to understand why she's not on library. I have not been able to do that.
I know why.
Do you want to say in?
Nope,
Okay,
I will talk to you after the meeting.
okay, the stars are not aligned for Marge and I. There's 4 times the last month I've tried to do it, and she's out doing stuff that's wonderful for her. She was with her grandkids this last week, so. But there's David Watkins. I've reached out to him twice. I have not got in touch with him. Christina is a big proponent of his, so I'm comfortable with that just based on Christina's opinion. If you're
I'm
not,
comfortable with that, with Christina's opinion.
so.
So mine.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so that's David Watkins for library.
So moved.
Motion by Bertle, second by Roscoe. All those in favor?
I,
Okay. So then the other person that I didn't talk to that I believe you'll see a plan probably next week is Mitch Omazorg. I talked to him for about an hour and a half to 2 hours on Saturday. Kind of explained to him.
You'll share?
Yeah.
Okay.
I told him to talk to you after he actually went to a plan commission meeting too.
Okay.
I said, after, the Harts have joined us so many times, I've come to realize how important that is that somebody show up, especially on plan commission, so they hit the ground running.
Yeah.
And also, it's gonna make sure they're actually gonna show up, because we do have some issues with some people that will commit to a committee, not show up, and we just can't have that on plan.
No.
So Nate, he's not being appointed right now
He is
instead?
not being appointed right now.
Okay.
Nope. So, okay. Ice rink planning update.
So this is just, even though there were minutes from that meeting, in the packet, I just wanted to let everybody know that the Friends of the Ice Rink and the Parks Committee, Lily and Allison were absent, but Lily had sent a letter which was in here, and Allison had expressed her opinions previous to that meeting, so we knew where they stood. Had a really fabulous open conversation about what the Friends of the Ice Rink thought about possibly moving the ice rink to the new parcel. And at the end of it, it was unanimous that it stay where it's at. So there will be no more wishy-washiness pertaining to that issue.
Thank you.
Okay. Then to approve open book and board review dates.
So as you know, every year we have an open book session where taxpayers can come and meet with the assessor and talk about the valuation of their property. The assessor sets those dates for us because the trustees are not involved in open book. That's been scheduled for May 14th here at the fire station if you all approve. The Board of Review then would take place on Thursday evening, May 30th. We have been doing Thursday evenings for as long as I've been here. And it's pretty tight to modify those times because they do have other municipalities that they work with, so they sort of plan their master calendar. If you feel that that would be appropriate, we can approve those dates and I will get back to them and let them know.
There is simply no way I can commit to May at this time.
Didn't we have for Board of Review in October? Is that something?
That was, the TIF Joint Board of Review is different from this Board of Review.
Got it.
Yes, and I realize that we will have the election results and all new board members, I should say, all the
May
new
30th,
board
is
members
that
in May as well, but.
close to Memorial.
Yeah.
So that, we had that in August last year. We couldn't schedule that until
Yes, how the assessment roll was done because we had a reevaluation last year.
I will commit to being there because last time I didn't have enough notice and I had already committed to being elsewhere, so.
All right.
That's
make
on
that
my
board.
calendar ahead of other things.
Does anyone else have any other objections? At this point, we just need to get it on the state's calendar. That's really the reason why we're approving. it.
Cool, six PM on the 30th.
Yeah.
That's fine with me.
You want to make that a motion, Patrice?
I so move we have the board of review on May 30th, Thursday night at 6 p.m.
Second.
And the open book on May
And the
14th.
open book on May what?
14th.
14.
We don't have to be here for.
No.
No.
Okay, motion by Champeau, second by Orozco. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carries.
What's going on here at the fire station that it has to be at the village hall? The village hall is just currently not very conducive to.
The fire department has the fire station booked on Thursday nights.
Then maybe if they always have it on Thursdays, we might want to consider not doing it Thursday next year.
Yeah, then you run into, if it's a Tuesday, is it gonna be a board night? Is it gonna be a plan commission night? You never know.
Okay. Sorry, never mind, Heidi.
Okay, underground utilities installation contract.
There were no surprises in this contract. That was their estimate. Next couple weeks, as soon as we get this signed, we will start bearing utilities.
Can we sign it or can I change things in it that I don't like?
You cannot change things, just as you said earlier. This is WPS and they will not do anything unless we sign this contract as is and pay them.
And pay them up front.
Yes.
So moved.
Motion by, motion by Orozco. Yeah, we would. I'll second it. All those in favor?
Hi,
Aye.
can we have signature authority to the Director of Public Works too?
On this?
Yeah, Dan, is this one you wanted signature authority on? I don't think.
Yeah,
it's-
this was a budgeted thing. It really is something that I could have did. They were very slow on getting it out.
I mean, like, that's already passed then, so we passed. it, so
Yeah, we're
We'll
good.
sign it so that in the future you're saying you want?
Well, the only reason I asked is it actually has Dan's address, his work at, or the wastewater treatment plant address on here. It doesn't really matter. It's just that we were talking about having signature authority go to Dan on some of these contracts, but.
That's, I mean, like, we've already got this passed. We need to do that. We'll-
Yeah.
Okay, financial report. Questions, concerns?
Yep. Dan, don't go away.
He's still there.
I'm here.
Okay,
Question?
so a couple of questions for you. Do you know why we bought $360 worth of bulk candy?
Yes, I just texted Eric on that. They bought more this year, for this coming, Fall Fest, and he said like Jolly Ranchers and, Sweet Tarts, they have like a 3-year shelf life, so he was not concerned about, purchasing it ahead of time.
Okay. And then the Parks Kitchen Appliances and Parks Building Housewares for about $500. Were you aware of those purchases? Did they talk to you about that before the purchases were made?
He talked to me when they were closing out the end of the year, they had a little, money left. And the guys for lunch, especially in the winter, purchased, I believe, pizza ovens, some things that they could cook with. Cause they did not really have any stuff to, cook with there as far as appliances.
Okay. So this was with leftover money that otherwise would have gone just back into
Back
the
to the
general,
Correct.
general fund. It's, in all of my years on the board, it's the only, I question a lot of bills, but once I understand what they're for, I don't have a problem with them. This one I did. But if you knew about it, I'll let it go. That's all that I had. Tasha answered all my other, oh no, one more for Dan. Hocker's excavation, boring for bedrock depth. Was this done on the Wilsey property and
Yes.
for what purpose?
Just to see where as future utilities go in, and actually he got really good results. He had 5 to 6 feet in most places.
Where utilities?
Kind of see the estimated cost for installing utilities.
Tyler had talked to me about that one too. So, and I'll be bringing something to Parks on that. So in order to determine what you're gonna do with that property, you have to know your depth of soil. Can you even get utilities out there? Where are the wetlands? We're gonna have to do wetland delineations before you really do anything on that property. So
This was just one step of
that's
many.
just one step. This
Yes.
coming Parks meeting will bring forward the wetland delineation project as well. It's just prep work for your future work.
Whatever decisions and wherever we lay out the roads. Okay, thank you.
All right. Then I'll make a motion, we pay the bills in the amount of $3,756,715.01.
Second.
Motion by Bell, second by Roscoe. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, staff reports. Questions?
I have another question for Dan, on page 311, number 10. Parks Department worked on replacing the street light in front of the Lure Restaurant. The replacement light did not fit the fixture. We now have some direct drive bulbs that will work bypassing the failing ballast on the street light. So is this some new technology that you're
No,
using?
we just, and we actually are still waiting for the socket, but, it's just another way to go. We have some pretty old technology that was like first generation LEDs, and they all have ballast and starters, and we're having trouble getting parts because they're old. This will be, you can use the initial 220 power, run it up, light it up, and it should be much simpler in the future for the guys to change and fix stuff. Right now, there's quite a bit of stuff in there that we've got a couple lights out right now, and I just see the next 3 years they're going to continue to go out, and this will be a simple solution. It'll be very easy for the employees to change out bulbs instead of digging in and changing out a starter, changing out a pretty expensive ballast. And your LED light itself is going to start to go because they're past their life.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else have any questions? Okay. Let's go to committee reports. Coastal byways.
Janelle met with them. They did not get their destination or county grant, so then now they're gonna, I believe, work on getting the coloring book into the schools.
Emergency management has not met. Finance committee we have not met. Nope, not since this one. Fire board minutes are in there. That the minutes just finally made it in there from October.
Yeah, we didn't meet, it was canceled.
Okay. And Green here.
They're working with, trying to work with Dork County Medical Center about a blue zone program. And they also, are going to be working on their, spreadsheet of all the green initiatives that has to be reported with the DNR, or sent to the DNR.
Okay. Historical Society.
Yes, they are creating a finance committee. And they're, searching for new vendors for the farmers market this coming season. They are looking for new ideas for kids and families to, attract them to their venue. They also, they want some clarification from the village. They're hearing rumors that the village wants them to move the farmers market downtown. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know.
So there was a gentleman that was in here for the housing study, and I don't recall his name, but he was with Sister Bay Historical, and he said, well, what's this conversation about that? I said, well, it came up with the board. And I said, well, I think Sarah White had asked the question about, is this
Yeah.
really the best place? And he said, okay, I'll talk to Sarah. So he said, he apparently knew Sarah was comfortable reaching out to her and just, I said, it's not that we want to move it. It's that we want to see it succeed more.
Right, and
And
it's not even our issue, it's theirs,
Yeah.
the farmer's market, so, yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I just thought I'd throw
Yeah,
that.
anyway, I just said, I don't think the village said that or did that or whatever.
Patrice, just real quick, Green Tier has talked about the farmer's market
Okay,
and Wayne Group because they're concerned about several things, so maybe that was where he.
It could
possibly
be.
heard that.
So we got those two connected and
okay,
I think we're good.
sure. Membership will be changing to online, they're working on a new website. The Chris Kindle Market was a big success, 10,000 people did attend this year. They made a profit of $53,000, that's before their bills. They will not be having trivia this year. They might be hosting a dad festival in June. And new exhibits will be featured and the floors need to be replaced in the Andersons.
Do they not know what their net is yet?
Yeah, they know, but I don't have that number. I'm sorry. Yeah, there were a lot of those. We'll see if it, yeah, transportation.
Okay. Albeit Lighting has not formed, is not met. Library Commission. Sarah was our liaison, she's not here, I think that we have some minutes in there. Marina Committee?
Yep, just two quick things. I hope they're quick. Sister Bay Scenic Boat Tours made a proposal for adding 2 services to their calendar of things they offer. One sounded actually quite interesting. It's a night sail, if you will, to take advantage of the dark skies. The issue would be the noise. They'd come in quite late. The boat coming in, and then you can imagine if it's very popular, and even if they do it once a week, you would have, how many people walking off the boat at 11 o'clock at night in the marina in quiet hours or 10 o'clock. I don't think you can ever guarantee everybody would be very quiet leaving the marina.
The other concern was their horn.
That horn's being checked into,
horn,
right?
yeah.
They got a sound on horn,
Especially if
and
they have to
that
do
wakes me
that
up in my house.
Horn.
Nice, yeah.
So that's one, we're gonna look into the horn, but the more we owe them an answer the next time we meet. The second one was, it sounded like maybe a bit more of a no-go right away, but he said when weather didn't permit them to go out, and they already had hired somebody to play music, could they just play music right on their boat, right there in the marina? And you can imagine, again, that would be problematic for other people right next to their slip and around them. So those were 2 things. The other one was the folks from the Shadow had a long conversation about the monies that they either do or do not owe, if you will, from the donations they've collected. They asked where we were in the process. Of course, the boathouse is being inspected. We'll have an answer on what the boathouse renders at, I think in 3 weeks before our next Marina Committee meeting. So depending on what that inspection comes back with, the point of housing the Shadow might be moot. We'll see. But the question I asked was, and then they said, we're not going to pay for the pier improvements that have been made, because that was with the idea that we would have a place to house the Shadow. And I asked if anybody ever wrote anything down, and was there ever an agreement made? And there wasn't. It was just a bunch of people talking. So there's a lot of money sitting there that a lot of people donated, and nobody seems to know what to do with it, and they're not going to pay the village the money. So there's no agreements. So anyway.
And I just want to add one thing. So there was discussion on that scenic boat tour, the night sail one.
Yeah.
And I did tell the Marina Committee that I thought the Plan Commission may be concerned about that, because yes, it's out on the water, but there's the land use side of it where they are waiting on land and you have all the parking and all these other issues.
Right, both of it, the music one and the.
Yeah,
Nice,
and
yeah.
I had recommended that it go to plan commission.
Yeah.
Before the marina committee went further with it to just see if plan commission would even allow it.
I'm not sure the Marina Committee is even, I don't know if we really want to take it forward. We, not that we need somebody else to be the bad guy. But I don't know that anybody really loves it.
So let them deal with it then.
You know what I mean?
And
Like,
save our
we can
time.
give it, we can
Yeah.
give it to you, but. They
Then
just,
two of
the
us
more
are
you-
talking about it and we don't need to.
Yeah, I mean, when I go on a night tour, of course, but it's not, it doesn't make sense. 100 people out there and coming in together, it's gonna be very noisy. So everybody else in the marina is gonna, you just have complaints all day long.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll just tell them that we can't do those things.
Okay. And Hop Outdoor Rec has not met, parking task force has not met, parking properties and streets, we dealt with some of that tonight.
Deceiving microplastics.
Yeah, yes.
Is anything to add for parks?
Checked out after I heard it.
My
With the
name
chef.
is misspelled. Again, well, Warner this time. It's WERNER on page 38.
I think unfortunately at this point, this is
That's
approved
fine.
minutes, so we have to go back and parks to change that.
The most relevant thing was the discussion on the RFP.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Personnel, that's all closed session stuff. Plan. We had the development agreement,
Housing.
the housing stuff also we heard back here. Okay, SBA,
No, it was like the last meeting and it was just.
tourism zone,
You know, we talk a lot about, people that are maybe in violation of the data or whatever, but what I really found interesting this week was they, have the new figures out on our average visitor in the county, not Sister Bay. And surprisingly, it was not families with children, and I really thought that was growing, and we hear people talk about, oh, we got more families with kids coming. It's not, so I thought that was interesting, some of the statistics they shared, but.
Who is it?
It's actually two groups. It was, if I remember right, like 45 to 65 or something like that. And then, I think that was the big one, was the no kids, probably kids just left the home type of people. And then and then there were two different income brackets. It was surprisingly, don't quote me on this, I wanna say like 45 to 65, so, and then the other one was like maybe 135 plus. So it wasn't that wealthy bracket or that bracket with money that we often think of. I mean, we can share that with you. I just thought data was interesting.
I don't know how they would know the income of the people that are coming to the county.
Oh. Yeah, I don't know.
Good God, what are they tracking now and how?
everything.
Yeah, I don't have the numbers right on it, but it was interesting.
Yeah, can you
and it wasn't
share,
what I expected.
just out
Yeah,
of curiosity?
Sure.
Okay. Utilities,
We did.
Village Hall Planning Task Force, is there anything that we didn't talk about?
We got it covered.
Okay. And we have matters to be placed on our future agenda for the committee, official or employee. Don?
I had one. We should probably think about revisiting the fee schedule and timing of it for the STR.
Okay.
Agreements. Sorry, not agreements, certification.
So that we were actually going to, that's chapter.
And maybe discussion about the recruiting of the new employee and how that's.
Yeah.
So we just got, you gotta keep that moving.
Yeah, that would have been, we were planning on reviewing chapter 18, that portion of the STR. After plan commission had gone through there, so that probably makes sense to do that at that point. That makes sense to you, I mean, like,
Well, we talked about the fee schedule and set it at board, not at planning, so I don't know that that matters.
It's still like-
It could be talked about it.
the two components of this, I was looking at, so planning weighs in on the zone, planning and zoning portion of
Yeah,
it, chapter
yeah.
66.
Yeah.
Was gonna get that, have that go along, and then when that comes to the board, also do chapter 18 at the same time, so we're dealing with all of that STR goodness in one meeting.
That's fine, yeah, I just wanted to mention it because it came up earlier that we have been collecting money and we'll collect more, and we need to make sure we're spending it on it. So we don't get in trouble.
Back to Village Hall, may I? Because I was still scrolling and didn't remember that I had notes.
Okay.
So, and it's a question for Tasha, because in there, the committee says it was proposed that they seek the use of room tax dollars and budgeting a portion of property taxes to fund the renovation project. And so what I'm asking is, TIF money is going to offset debt. Or
Yeah.
Right.
It's going to pay its own debt.
pay its own debt and pay back. Okay. That money is for our infrastructure. Room tax goes to SBAA, a portion of it. And
The rest of it goes to pay debt.
the rest of it goes to pay debt. And we set that up in the past for it to pay debt.
That's how it's always been.
So I don't know that room tax money is an option.
That was explained to them, Denise, at the meeting.
Oh, okay. Well, it
Um,
doesn't reflect it in the,
Because she continues to bring it up at subsequent meetings. So they've heard it several times already.
I'm
But it
sorry I brought it up again.
But we did talk about trying to get the Destination Door County
Great.
grant for the design of the HVAC and all that other stuff. And that's why kind of the timing of getting those structural plans, we can get bids, so we can apply is all kind of integral, so.
And is the basement floor still just concrete?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Can I refer
And actually,
something to Parks Committee?
and because the
Can we
water
talk about,
levels still
fuel
spike, we don't
maintenance for the
get
Oscar
better.
County, did they?
Leave it. Yeah, it actually kind of looks cool.
Maybe that was the upcoming.
If you want it on there, you could put it on there. I'll have to check it.
Yeah, because it's coming up.
Anything else? Okay, I'll make, on to 14, I'll make a motion, we can get in executive session pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.851G to confirm with legal counsel for a government body which is running oral written place for strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation which it is or may likely to become involved regarding the Anschutz able to.
Second.
Motion by Bill, second by Rose, roll call vote, Bell, yes.
Berto,
Do it if you want. Berto.
Berto, yes.
Gotcha.
Well, then I realized.
Yes.
Which way?
Oh, yeah. Shampoo, yes.
Okay, we are in closed session. Closed session. Second by Roscoe, roll call vote, Bell, yes.
Cox, yes.
Berto, yes.
Shampoo, yes. Yes. Werner, yes.
Okay, we're out of closed, so. I will make a motion that we amend the stipulation and present to Anschutz tomorrow.
Second.
Motion by Bill, second by Roscoe, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
As plan commission chair, I'm sorry, I cannot vote for it. Please understand.
Okay. All right, so we got that, then, we'll consider a motion to go back into executive session.
Now, can we take just a general 5?
Yeah,
Soon as
I
we
can do that. I was
yeah.
gonna do that and come out of there, so, closed session pursuant to 19 sub 85 1C, consider employment, promotion, compensation, performance, evaluation of the public and take over which governmental body has jurisdiction or exercise responsibility regarding village administrator. Motion by Bell.
Second.
Second by Cox, roll call. Bell, yes.
Cox, yes.
Berto, yes.
Campo, yes.
Roscoe, yes.
Horny, yes.
Okay, we're in close.